The night was thick with mist, and the air seemed to carry a cold, almost tangible sense of dread. Paris slept uneasily, its cobbled streets silent except for the occasional clatter of a lone horse's hooves echoing through the alleys. Within the walls of the city, in a heavily guarded fortress that had long been the headquarters of the Knights Templar, shadows moved with an unnatural caution. Men of steel and faith, who had once been the proud protectors of pilgrims and the defenders of the Holy Land, now faced an enemy far closer to home. This was not an army of Saracens or invaders from distant lands, but a betrayal rooted in politics, ambition, and fear. The first torches flickered in the distance, cutting through the fog like sharp knives. They danced against the ancient stones of the Templar stronghold, revealing the anxious faces of sentries who knew, somehow, that this night would change everything. Word had spread in hushed whispers across the city. At dawn, the king's men would descend upon the order, arresting every knight, interrogating them, tearing apart the fabric of a brotherhood that had stood for nearly 2 centuries. But the night itself seemed unwilling to yield the truth. It held its secrets tightly, cloaking the city in a suffocating tension. Inside the fortress, the knights moved with an eerie calm. Some prayed, clutching rosaries worn smooth by decades of devotion. Others paced the halls, their boots clicking against the stone floors, each step a counterpoint to the silence that enveloped them. They had faced battles across deserts, stormed fortresses, and endured the chaos of the Crusades. Yet there was something about this night that unsettled even the bravest hearts. It was not the threat of death that haunted them. It was the feeling that what they carried, what they guarded, was far more precious than life itself. And now that secret was in danger of being stolen forever. In the courtyard, the first contingent of soldiers arrived. Their armor glinted faintly under the flickering torchlight, but their expressions betrayed more than discipline. They carried the weight of fear and uncertainty. Orders had been given in hushed tones. The king demanded swift action, and no one was to escape. The sound of chains being readied echoed ominously, mingling with the distant tolling of church bells, their chimes distorted by the fog. Inside the fortress, Templars could hear the creak of gates, the muffled voices of soldiers, and a silence so profound it seemed to press against their ears, their hearts, their very souls. Then the doors burst open. A wave of soldiers flooded the hallways, and the knights were seized before they could even draw their swords. Some resisted, fighting with the precision and discipline of warriors trained in battle, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Chains clinked, the heavy clatter echoing off stone walls that had once seemed impregnable. The torchlight cast long, flickering shadows, turning every corner into a theater of terror. Faces twisted with shock, with disbelief, with anger. Yet even as they were dragged into cells, there was an unspoken understanding among the knights. Their greatest battles had always been fought with courage, but this was a battle they could not win with steel alone. Outside, the city seemed oblivious to the chaos within the fortress walls. Yet the whispers of what was happening began to spread, like a contagion, carried on the wind from street to street. Rumors of secret trials, of torture, of confessions forced by fire and water, began to seep into the minds of the citizens. Many could not believe that the mighty Templars, who had once commanded armies and held influence over kings, could be brought low so suddenly. And yet, the fear in the air was undeniable. Something immense had shifted, a force more insidious than any army they had faced on distant battlefields. In their cells, the knights confronted a terror unlike any other. The slow, creeping realization that the world they had fought for, the brotherhood they had sworn to protect, was unraveling. It was not just their freedom that was at stake. It was the legacy of an order intertwined with secrets that could change the very understanding of history itself. Some prayed for divine intervention, others cursed the men who had betrayed them, and a few simply stared into the darkness, knowing that whatever lay ahead would leave scars beyond the physical. Yet even as despair threatened to consume them, a subtle tension lingered, an unspoken question that burned hotter than fear. What secret could be so dangerous that a king and a pope would conspire to destroy an entire order to keep it hidden? The air seemed to thrum with this question, vibrating in the stone walls, in the chains, in the hearts of every Templar present. It was a secret that had been guarded across continents, through deserts and holy wars, whispered in corridors of power, and hidden beneath the very feet of men who believed they were untouchable. And now, in the quiet agony of their confinement, the knights knew. Some truths are so perilous that even the bravest souls tremble before them. Outside, the torches flickered lower as dawn approached, but the fog remained, a gray shroud that seemed to mourn the fall of the order. The streets of Paris began to stir, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing in oblivion to the drama unfolding in secret. Yet within the fortress walls, the world had shifted irrevocably. A chapter of history had ended in shadows, betrayal, and the clinking of chains. The Templars had fallen, but the secret they carried, the one that had made them a target, the one worth dying for, remained. And as the first light of morning touched the city, a haunting thought lingered. In the centuries to come, men would search, speculate, and dream, but some truths might never be fully revealed. Even as the Templars were dragged from their chambers into the cold grip of Parisian dungeons, whispers began to stir among the people. Rumors that were half fear, half wonder. Tales of a relic so powerful, so sacred, that it could alter the very course of history, began to weave their way through taverns, monasteries, and markets. The Holy Grail, the legendary chalice said to have held the blood of Christ, became more than a story whispered by monks in candlelit chapels. It was a question that haunted every eye that glimpsed the knights in chains, every heart that pondered the fate of an order that had once seemed untouchable. The Grail's legend was ancient, stretching back centuries into the mist of early Christendom. Some said it had been brought from the Holy Land by the most devout disciples, a vessel of miraculous power that could heal, sanctify, and perhaps even grant immortality. Others whispered that it was no ordinary cup, but a symbol, a key to secret knowledge that the Church feared and the powerful coveted. It was a relic that was spoken of in hushed tones, mentioned in coded manuscripts, and depicted in carvings so subtle that only the initiated could understand their meaning. And now, as the Templars fell, the world seemed poised on the edge of a revelation or a catastrophe. The very idea that the Templars could be connected to such a relic sent shivers through Europe. They were already men of mystery, warriors and monks in one, masters of finance, protectors of pilgrims, and holders of secrets that reached far beyond the battlefield. Could it be that the rumors of a sacred chalice were true? Could the same knights, whose loyalty had once been to God and to their brethren, have carried with them a secret so powerful that kings and popes alike would move heaven and earth to conceal it? The question alone was enough to ignite fear and fascination alike. Historians and chroniclers would later debate the truth of these claims, arguing over parchment and ink, over codes and annotations hidden within manuscripts. But for the people living in that fog-laden night of 1307, it was not the academic question that stirred their souls. It was the sense of wonder, the sense that the universe itself had conspired to hide something incredible from them. The Templars, these knights of unparalleled courage, were rumored to be the keepers of this mystery. And in their arrest, the world may have glimpsed only the shadow of what had been. Across Europe, the whispers spread like wildfire. In quiet monasteries in the Pyrenees, monks spoke in trembling voices of a cup that glimmered with divine light. In the marketplaces of Venice and the streets of Lisbon, merchants and travelers exchanged stories of a vessel that could grant visions, heal the sick, and bestow unimaginable blessings. And always, there was the same refrain. The Templars knew more than anyone else, and they had been silenced before the truth could reach the eyes of the world. But the more people speculated, the more elusive the truth became. Was the Grail a tangible object, a cup crafted from gold or silver, hidden in a vault beneath the fortress walls? Or was it something more abstract, a metaphor for divine wisdom, a secret knowledge so powerful that it could only be understood by those who had devoted their lives entirely to God? Some chroniclers suggested that the chalice had been used in secret rituals, passed from hand to hand through generations of the faithful, its power preserved by those who dared to guard it. Others insisted it was a myth, a story concocted to elevate the Templars' legend and terrify their enemies. And yet the question lingered. If it was only a legend, Why had the order been destroyed so swiftly, so thoroughly, in the dead of night? The Templars themselves had been bound by vows, sworn to secrecy in all matters of spiritual and martial concern. They had fought in the deserts of the Holy Land, faced battles that would have broken lesser men, and survived the treacherous politics of kings and sultans. Their loyalty was absolute, their courage unmatched. And now, facing their own annihilation, some of them may have carried knowledge of the Grail, knowledge that could explain why they had been singled out, why the fury of a king had been unleashed against men who had only served their faith. As dawn crept slowly over the city, the fog began to lift, revealing the pale outlines of rooftops and church spires. Yet even as Paris awoke, the sense of mystery remained. Those who had caught a glimpse of the arrests, who had heard the distant shouts and the clatter of chains, felt that something extraordinary had been lost, perhaps forever. And in the corners of the city where shadows still lingered, the whispers of the Grail continued to float on the air, intertwining with the fear and awe that the Templars' fall had inspired. It was a story of faith, of ambition, and of a power that was never meant for ordinary eyes. Somewhere in the world, the chalice waited. Perhaps it rested in a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of a Templar fortress. Perhaps it had been carried across oceans, hidden among the rolling hills of distant lands. Or perhaps it was not a cup at all, but an idea, a secret wisdom encoded in symbols and texts, waiting for the right minds to unlock it. The Templars, even in their chains, may have been its guardians, its keepers, or its final witnesses. And as the centuries stretched forward, the story of the Sacred Chalice would continue to inspire curiosity, obsession, and the unrelenting pursuit of truth. The night of the Templars' fall had ended, but the mystery of the Grail had only begun. It would ripple through history, touching kings, monks, explorers, and scholars, leaving an echo of wonder and dread that could never be silenced. The world may never know the full truth, yet the question remained: what secret did the Templars guard with their lives? What was so sacred, so powerful, that it demanded the destruction of an order that had once seemed invincible? And perhaps, somewhere, the chalice still waited, silent and eternal, a relic of faith and ambition, hidden in plain sight or in the shadows where only the most daring would ever find it. Long before the night of betrayal in Paris, long before the torches lit the misty streets in the arrest of the Templars, there was a spark that would grow into one of the most powerful orders the medieval world had ever seen. It began with the First Crusade, in the year 1096, when the Christian world was swept up in a fervor of faith, devotion, and violent ambition. Pilgrims journeyed across deserts, mountains, and treacherous lands to reach Jerusalem, carrying the weight of prayer and the hope of salvation. But the roads were perilous, filled with bandits, hostile forces, and the unforgiving elements. It was in these crucibles of danger that a small group of men would rise, dedicated to protecting the innocent, yet destined to wield influence far beyond the battlefield. These men were not born as warriors in the traditional sense. Many came from humble backgrounds, sons of farmers, minor nobles, and devout peasants, but all shared a burning devotion to God and a desire to serve a higher purpose. They became monks, yes, but monks unlike any the church had known. They did not confine themselves to prayer alone. They carried swords, wore armor, and took on the dangerous role of guardians of pilgrims, walking the line between sanctity and violence. Their duality, warrior and monk, devout and strategic, would set them apart, earning both reverence and fear. The origins of the order were modest. Around a dozen men, led by Hugues de Payens, pledged themselves to the protection of travelers in the Holy Land. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet their mission demanded courage that surpassed ordinary devotion. Every patrol along the roads to Jerusalem was a test of faith, a trial by fire. And as they faced ambushes, treacherous terrain, and enemies whose numbers dwarfed their own, they forged a reputation for discipline, fearlessness, and unwavering loyalty. It was this reputation that began to draw attention, not just from the faithful, but from kings, nobles, and the church itself. Over time, their ranks swelled. Knights from across Europe were drawn to the Templars not only for spiritual reasons but for the promise of purpose, honor, and a cause greater than themselves. Yet with growth came complexity. The Templars were no longer merely guardians of pilgrims. They became a military and financial powerhouse, trusted with funds, land, and influence that stretched from Jerusalem to Paris, from Portugal to the banks of the Rhine. Their fortified commanderies offered refuge and protection, while their coffers amassed wealth that rivaled many kingdoms. This balance of devotion and power made them unique and inevitably envied. But it was not just their strength in arms or their riches that set the Templars apart. It was the aura of mystery that surrounded them. From the outside, they were perfect soldiers of God, unflinching in battle, incorruptible in principle. Inside, they cultivated a system of discipline and secrecy, a brotherhood bound by rituals and oaths that few outsiders could comprehend. Some whispered that they possessed knowledge beyond the ordinary, that within their fortresses lay secrets of faith, maps of ancient lands, and perhaps even relics of divine significance. Others believed that their understanding of war, finance, and politics combined with divine guidance made them untouchable. And for a time they were. As the Crusades continued, the Templars proved themselves on the battlefield. Their armor glinted in the sun as they charged into sieges, their swords striking down enemies with an efficiency that seemed almost preordained. Tales of their valor spread across Europe, drawing young men eager for glory and older knights seeking purpose. Yet even as their fame grew, they remained a paradox. Men of God who could shed blood without hesitation, warriors whose devotion to Christ was matched only by their strategic cunning. To many, they were saints. To others, they were dangerous, a force that operated in a space between heaven and the human desire for power. Their rapid rise was not without challenges. Rival orders, local lords, and even kings eyed their wealth and influence with suspicion. In Jerusalem, the politics of the crusader states required careful navigation, balancing alliances with other military orders, monarchs, and local powers. Yet the Templars adapted. Their rigid hierarchy, strict discipline, and unshakable unity allowed them to endure where others failed. They became indispensable not just for the protection of pilgrims, but as advisors, bankers, and architects of the crusader states themselves. Every fortress they built, every contract they signed, reinforced their position, quietly consolidating power that would echo across centuries. But beyond the battles and politics, there was a quieter, more profound element to their rise, a sense of destiny. The Templars believed their mission was sanctioned by heaven, that they were chosen to guard the sacred and uphold the will of God. Each initiation, each ritual, each prayer and act of courage was imbued with meaning. And it was this belief, more than any sword or fortress, that sustained them through hardship, through doubt, and eventually, through the night that would see them betrayed. It is this combination, humble origins, unshakable faith, strategic brilliance, and perhaps a brush with secrets too powerful for ordinary men, that set the Templars apart from any other order of their time. They were, in many ways, a paradox incarnate. Monks who fought, warriors who prayed, men who were both ordinary and extraordinary. And it was this duality that would make their fall so shocking, their legacy so compelling, and the whispers of what they carried, perhaps the Sacred Chalice itself, so irresistible to those who would seek it in the centuries to come. Even as we look back now, centuries later, the story of their rise evokes awe and curiosity. The Templars were not merely a product of their time. They were architects of destiny, shaping history in ways that few could see. Their discipline, their faith, and their relentless pursuit of purpose would leave echoes that resonate even today, whispers of courage, mystery, and devotion that refuse to fade. And in the shadows of their achievements lies a question that continues to haunt historians, treasure hunters, and dreamers alike. What did they guard so fiercely, and why did the world fear it enough to destroy them? Europe at the turn of the 13th century was a land of contrasts, a place where faith and violence, ambition and devotion, coexisted in uneasy tension. Castles rose like jagged teeth along hillsides, their stone walls concealing both opulence and terror. Cities thrived, markets buzzed with merchants from distant lands, and yet beyond the gates, peasants labored under harsh lords. War was ever present, and disease and famine shadowed daily life. In this world, where survival was uncertain and power was the only currency that could secure safety, the stage was set for extraordinary forces to emerge, and none more extraordinary than the Knights Templar. The Crusades had left Europe in a state of both exaltation and exhaustion. Millions had journeyed to the Holy Land in the name of God, some driven by faith, others by greed, and many by the promise of earthly rewards such as land or titles. Entire regions had been emptied of men, leaving behind fractured communities and desperate economies. At the same time, the Church was consolidating its influence, asserting authority over kings and princes, and demanding loyalty through both spiritual and temporal means. The tension between secular rulers and the Church created a volatile environment, one where allegiances could shift overnight, and where fear was often as powerful a tool as a sword. It was within this turbulence that the Templars carved out their place. They were not merely warriors. They were protectors, financiers, and political actors, operating across borders and beyond the reach of local lords. Yet their rise to prominence, while extraordinary, also painted a target on their backs. Wealth bred envy, influence bred suspicion, and secrecy bred fear. Every fortress they constructed, every donation they received, every battle they won, intensified the perception that the Templars were more than mere men. They were an institution with ambitions that few dared to confront. Kings and princes, despite relying on the Templars for military and financial support, began to regard them with caution. The line between reverence and resentment was thin. Monarchs who owed debts to the order knew that one misstep could provoke retaliation or scandal, while ambitious rulers saw the order's wealth as a tempting prize. The Church, too, was not immune to suspicion. Though the Templars professed loyalty to the Pope, their independence, secrecy, and accumulated influence unnerved even the highest-ranking clerics. Rumors of hidden knowledge, of forbidden rituals, and of a sacred relic, the Grail, added a shadow of mystery that made the powerful wary. In this charged atmosphere, Europe was a chessboard of intrigue. Alliances were fragile, marriages were strategic, and wars were fought not just with armies, but with treachery, diplomacy, and subterfuge. A king could call upon his armies, yet still tremble before the quiet influence of a small but disciplined order of monks-turned-knights. And as the Templars extended their reach from the Holy Land to France, England, and the Iberian Peninsula, the whispers of their wealth and secrecy spread like wildfire. People began to ask, who were these men who could move armies, command riches, and yet swear absolute obedience to God above all else? The era was also defined by extremes of belief. Faith was absolute, pervasive, and often terrifying. Miracles were revered, heresy punished with fire, and the lines between devotion and fanaticism blurred. For the Templars, this environment demanded careful navigation. They were men of deep piety, yet they were also men who understood the necessity of pragmatism. Their survival, and the survival of the sacred secrets they may have carried, depended on their ability to act decisively in a world where the smallest misstep could mean death or disgrace. Yet, it was not only human ambition and fear that shaped the times. Nature, too, played a formidable role. Rivers could flood, crops fail, and winters could bring starvation. Disease spread unchecked, claiming thousands and destabilizing regions. In such an unforgiving world, power became both a shield and a weapon. The Templars, with their vast network of fortresses, granaries, and financial resources, appeared almost untouchable. And for ordinary people, this combination of piety, power, and mystery made the order seem larger than life. A force both protective and unknowable, revered and feared. Amid this tension, the stage was set for intrigue of the highest order. Kings who had once called the Templars allies began to see them as competitors. Church officials who had relied on their loyalty began to question their intentions. And rumors of a relic of immense power, the Holy Grail, gave the fear a tangible form. The chalice was said to be a vessel of divine connection, capable of transforming the ordinary into the miraculous. And if the Templars possessed it or even claimed to possess it, it was a power that could challenge the very foundations of kingship and ecclesiastical authority alike. This was a Europe on the brink of revelation and ruin. Power was fleeting, alliances were fragile, and secrets could tip the balance of entire kingdoms. In such a world, the Templars were both protectors and provocateurs. Their military skill, financial ingenuity, and spiritual devotion made them indispensable, yet simultaneously, it made them targets. Every fortress they built, every mission they undertook, every secret they kept, was a thread in a delicate web of influence that could unravel in an instant. And unravel it did. The same world that had once celebrated the Templars' courage, that had relied on their skill and devotion, would turn against them with devastating swiftness. Kings and popes, motivated by fear, envy, and ambition, orchestrated their downfall with meticulous precision. The stage was set for the night when the order, feared and revered in equal measure, would be struck down. Yet beneath the fear and ambition, a deeper question lingered, haunting the very soul of Europe. What was it that these men had guarded with such secrecy, and why was it worth destroying everything to conceal? The Knights Templar were not merely a military force. They were an institution forged in discipline, bound by rules, and sanctified by a code that demanded absolute loyalty and devotion. Their lives were governed by strict routines, rituals, and an unwavering adherence to the principles of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Yet these vows were not simple gestures of piety. They were a framework that enabled the order to function with precision, to operate across continents, and to wield power that rivaled kings. Every knight, every squire, every chaplain understood that their commitment was more than personal. It was sacred, eternal, and, at times, perilously demanding. The code of the Templars was both simple and profound. They were warriors, yes, but their swords were extensions of their devotion. Every battle fought in the Holy Land was not merely a contest of strength or strategy, it was a spiritual test. To falter in courage was to falter in faith. To show mercy where justice demanded action could be seen as weakness. And yet, paradoxically, they were also men of compassion. The order had been founded to protect pilgrims, the vulnerable travelers who risked death and deprivation along the treacherous roads to Jerusalem. This duality, ferocity in battle and devotion to the defenseless, was the cornerstone of their identity, the thread that wove together faith and action. Daily life within a Templar fortress was a rhythm of prayer, training, and service. Dawn would break over the walls with the tolling of bells, calling knights to prayer before the sun had even warmed the stones. Hours were spent in rigorous training. Swordplay, mounted drills, and strategic exercises designed to prepare them for both siege and open battle. The discipline was relentless. Mistakes were not tolerated, for each knight's skill and obedience were a measure of the order's collective strength. And when the day's training ended, study and contemplation followed. The Templars were not just warriors, they were scholars of theology, law, and sometimes even science. Knowledge, like steel, was a weapon to be honed. Yet beneath the structured life lay layers of secrecy and ritual that few outsiders could ever penetrate. Initiation into the order was a ceremony shrouded in solemnity and, some would whisper, a hint of mysticism. New members took vows in private chambers, their oaths witnessed by only a few, binding them to obedience, silence, and a life of devotion beyond the ordinary understanding of the world. Some historians have suggested that these rituals were designed not only to instill loyalty but to protect knowledge. Hidden codes, maps, and possibly even sacred objects, guarded under oath by those who would carry the weight of the order's mysteries across decades and continents. The Templars' discipline extended beyond the individual to the very structure of the order itself. Commanderies, fortified compounds scattered across Europe and the Holy Land, were more than military bases. They were centers of administration, finance, and intelligence. Within their walls, meticulous records were kept, contracts executed, and treasures secured. The order's wealth and influence grew steadily, in part because of the rigor with which these operations were conducted. Every knight understood that personal ambition had to be sacrificed on the altar of collective purpose. To falter was not merely to fail oneself but to jeopardize the entire order. The paradox of the Templar Code was its demand for both obedience and initiative. Knights were expected to act decisively in battle, to navigate political intrigues, and to make life-or-death decisions. all within the confines of strict moral and spiritual guidelines. They were expected to balance courage and humility, justice and mercy, faith and practicality. Many failed, and the order was ruthless in correcting weakness. Yet it was precisely this intensity, this combination of discipline and moral rigor, that forged men capable of extraordinary feats, men who could stand against kings, armies, and even the forces of nature with unshakable resolve. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Templar Code was its ambiguity. While they were bound by vows, their power and influence often placed them above the reach of ordinary laws. They were answerable to the Pope, yes, but not to local lords or monarchs. This independence, while essential to their mission, made them objects of suspicion. Their loyalty was absolute, yet their secrecy made them enigmatic. What did they truly guard? What knowledge or power lay hidden beneath the apparent simplicity of their vows? Contemporaries and later chroniclers alike would marvel at this delicate balance between transparency and secrecy, between obedience and autonomy. Within the cloisters and courtyards, whispers circulated. Some spoke of the order's hidden treasures: gold, manuscripts, and sacred relics brought from the East. Others hinted at knowledge so profound it could challenge the very structures of society and faith. The chalice, the Grail itself, was said to be among these mysteries, a relic of power beyond comprehension. To the Templars, such secrets were not sources of greed or vanity. They were responsibilities, burdens of divine importance. To reveal them to the unworthy, or to allow them to fall into the hands of the ambitious or the corrupt, could bring calamity. And so the code of silence and secrecy became as vital as any vow of obedience or courage. The knights' daily lives, for all their rigor, were also marked by moments of reflection and devotion. Meals were simple, often eaten in silence or accompanied by quiet prayers. Nights were spent in meditation or vigil, the flicker of candlelight casting long shadows across stone walls. In these moments, the knights contemplated the fragility of life, the enormity of their mission, and the invisible threads connecting them to a divine purpose. Each decision, each action, was framed not merely in the context of human consequence but in the light of eternal judgment. It is easy, centuries later, to look upon the Templar Code and see only rigidity, discipline, and perhaps a touch of obsession. But in its time, it was a lifeline, a structure that allowed an order of extraordinary ambition and devotion to survive amidst chaos. It gave them the ability to navigate the treacherous politics of Europe, the dangers of the Holy Land, and the challenges of maintaining unity across a continent-spanning organization. The code shaped not only their behavior but their very identity, forging a brotherhood capable of extraordinary loyalty and unimaginable feats. And yet, even the most disciplined of codes cannot protect against envy, fear, and ambition. For all the Templars' valor, their devotion, and their secrecy, the order's very strength would become its undoing. Kings who feared their wealth, popes who feared their independence, and rivals who feared their knowledge would conspire to unravel the very fabric of the brotherhood. The vows that had forged unity and courage would not shield them from betrayal. But within this paradox, discipline that could inspire greatness, secrecy that could preserve the sacred, lay the enduring mystery of what they guarded and why the world would go to such lengths to destroy them. The Code of the Templars was more than a set of rules. It was a philosophy, a moral compass, and a protective veil over secrets whose significance may never be fully understood. It was this code, above all, that sustained them in the deserts of the Holy Land, in the fortified walls of Europe, and ultimately, in the shadowed cells of Paris when the world turned against them. It was the armor of faith, the shield of discipline, and the chain that bound them to a destiny larger than themselves. A destiny that would leave echoes of mystery and reverence across the centuries. Amid the rise of the Knights Templar, amid their unwavering discipline and ironclad loyalty, there emerged a question that would shadow their every step. What did they truly guard? For centuries, historians, chroniclers, and whispered legends have hinted that the order was more than a brotherhood of warrior monks. They were the protectors of secrets, custodians of knowledge, and, some claimed, the guardians of relics so sacred that their very existence could alter the course of nations. Chief among these whispers was the tale of a chalice, a vessel of divine significance, the Holy Grail. And though no contemporary record could confirm its possession, the clues, the symbols, and the meticulous secrecy of the Templars all suggested that they were intimately connected to it. The first inklings of this possibility arose from the Order's earliest documents and charters. While outwardly their mission appeared simple, protect pilgrims, fight in the Holy Land, maintain fortresses, their records hinted at something more. References to hidden treasures, cryptic notes regarding sacred objects, and the unusual care with which certain artifacts were transported from the East to Europe all suggested a pattern. The Templars did not merely collect gold or relics for display. They safeguarded them, sometimes in the most obscure corners of their fortresses, sometimes entrusted only to the most senior knights sworn to secrecy. These items were catalogued with a precision that bordered on obsession, and in some cases, their existence was marked only by enigmatic symbols carved into stone, understood only by those initiated into the deepest levels of the Order. Many scholars have tried to dismiss the connection between the Templars and the Grail as fanciful legend, a medieval myth woven to embellish the story of an already remarkable order. Yet when examining the patterns of their wealth, their extraordinary reach, and the secretive nature of their operations, a compelling case emerges. Consider this. The Templars were often sent to transport sacred relics across vast distances, sometimes under threat of ambush, across territories controlled by hostile forces. They did so with an almost ritualistic care, their movements coordinated with military precision, their paths often obscured by decoys and secret routes. Could these practices have been intended solely to protect gold and mundane treasures? Or was there a deeper, spiritual purpose guiding them? Clues abound in the architecture of their fortresses and churches. Certain Templar chapels display unusual geometric patterns, strange carvings, and symbols that are absent in other contemporary orders. Some historians argue that these were purely decorative, mere artistic flourishes. Yet others suggest they served as coded maps, markers pointing toward hidden chambers, concealed passageways, or secret vaults where relics of profound importance were stored. For those trained in Templar knowledge, a seemingly innocuous cross or a particular arrangement of stones might have indicated a location of unimaginable significance. Among the most tantalizing possibilities is that these symbols were connected to the Grail, pointing to where it was kept, or to whom it had been entrusted. Stories from later centuries only deepen the mystery. Chroniclers, some writing decades after the fall of the Templars, hinted that the Order's wealth and secrecy went beyond money or lands. Tales persisted of knights who swore never to reveal what they had seen, of treasures that vanished without a trace, and of objects that radiated a sacred aura, inspiring devotion and fear alike. In these accounts, the chalice is often described not just as a cup, but as a source of power, a vessel capable of healing, granting visions, or bestowing divine favor. The Templars, it was suggested, were not mere guardians of a physical object. They were custodians of a mystery that could reshape the world if revealed to the unworthy. Some researchers point to the meticulous way in which the Templars catalogued sacred relics brought from the Holy Land as evidence of a deliberate pattern. Certain items, described only in cryptic terms, were stored separately from ordinary treasures, often in the most heavily fortified areas of a fortress. Only the most trusted knights were allowed access, and even among them, knowledge was compartmentalized. A knight in France might know only the general location of a relic, while another in Cyprus might know its journey from the east, but no single individual ever held complete understanding. Could this elaborate secrecy have been designed specifically to protect the Grail? The theory is compelling, for no other explanation accounts for the extraordinary lengths the Order took to conceal these objects. Even within the Order, there were whispers of divisions, of secret chapters within chapters, whose sole purpose was to guard knowledge of the most sacred objects. Initiates of these inner circles were said to be sworn to silence under pain of excommunication or death, trained not only in combat, but in the interpretation of sacred symbols, astrological signs, and ancient texts. To outsiders, these practices may have seemed excessive, even paranoid. But to the Templars, they were necessary. A mistake, a misstep, a misplaced trust could result in the loss of something far greater than gold or jewels. It could mean the loss of divine favor or the exposure of a secret the world was not ready to see. Some modern historians speculate that the Templars' obsession with secrecy, their meticulous record-keeping, and their sudden, brutal fall in 1307 are all interwoven with the Grail mystery. When King Philip IV of France ordered the arrests, his motives were officially framed as religious, allegations of heresy, blasphemy, and immoral practices. Yet there is little doubt that ambition, envy, and fear played far greater roles. What if the real fear was not heresy, but knowledge? What if the king and his allies understood, at some level, that the Templars were the guardians of a secret so powerful it could destabilize kingdoms and challenge the authority of the Church itself? And so, the question persists, did the Templars possess the Holy Grail? Or were they merely its closest keepers, protecting the legend as much as the object itself? The answer may never be fully known. Yet the evidence, their secrecy, their rituals, their fortresses, their dedication to duty even unto death, suggests that they were entrusted with something beyond ordinary comprehension, something so sacred, so perilous, that it demanded absolute loyalty and unquestioning faith. And as the order fell, as torches lit the misty streets of Paris and chains clinked in the dungeons, that secret did not vanish. It was carried forward by the surviving knights, hidden in cryptic symbols, secret passages, and perhaps, in the hearts of those sworn to protect it. Every fortress, every codex, every ritual hints at a purpose beyond mere military ambition. Somewhere in the shadowed corridors of history lies the truth, a relic of unimaginable significance, a chalice that may have held not just wine, but the blood of a higher power, safeguarded by the most disciplined and devoted warriors the world had ever known. And as centuries passed, this secret continued to captivate, haunt, and inspire. A mystery that whispers through the stones of ancient fortresses, the pages of medieval manuscripts, and the echoes of a brotherhood willing to sacrifice everything for a cause that defied time. The Templars may have vanished from power, but the question remains, lingering like a shadow across history. What did they protect, and why was it worth dying for? The Holy Grail, the Sacred Chalice of eternity, may not be a myth. And if it exists or ever existed, the Templars were, perhaps, the only ones capable of guarding it in a world unprepared for its power. The Templar fortresses were more than stone walls and battlements. They were embodiments of power, secrecy, and sacred purpose. Rising like silent sentinels across Europe and the Holy Land, these structures were meticulously designed to withstand sieges, intimidate enemies, and protect not only the knights who dwelled within them but also the relics and secrets that were entrusted to the order. To the untrained eye, they were impressive castles, imposing and functional. But to those who understood the Templar mind, they were symbols of devotion and cryptic maps, a network of strength and secrecy that could conceal treasures no ordinary fortress could hold. Every fortress followed a pattern, a blueprint perfected over decades. Thick stone walls, often angled to deflect siege engines, enclosed courtyards where knights drilled tirelessly, their swords clashing with metallic precision in the morning light. Towers rose above the walls, offering both a defensive vantage point and a psychological display of dominance. Beneath the visible architecture, however, lay hidden passages, secret chambers, and subterranean vaults that were carefully concealed from outsiders. These were not merely storage rooms. They were sanctuaries for relics, manuscripts, and perhaps, the very chalice that had inspired legends and envy alike. The entrances to these hidden chambers were often so cunningly disguised that even experienced visitors could walk past them countless times without ever suspecting their presence. A carved stone that seemed decorative, a false wall, or a trapdoor beneath the chapel floor could conceal a treasure of immense spiritual and historical significance. Only the most trusted knights, those who had sworn the deepest oaths, were permitted to know the exact locations. And even then, the knowledge was compartmentalized. One knight might know the path to a particular vault, while another held the key to its contents, ensuring that no single individual could betray the order's secrets without the complicity of others. Inside these chambers, the air was thick with the weight of history and devotion. Manuscripts, codices, and relics were stored with painstaking care, often protected by layers of locks, rituals, and wards. Some chambers were dedicated to prayer and meditation, their walls lined with symbols and inscriptions whose meanings were known only to the initiated. Others served as safes for gold, silver, and sacred objects brought from Jerusalem or other holy sites. Among the whispered legends is the idea that the most precious of these relics was the Holy Grail, stored with the utmost care, hidden so effectively that no enemy, no king, no pope, no invader could ever seize it. The design of Templar fortresses reflected a philosophy that blended practicality with the mystical. Defensive features were balanced with symbolic gestures. Chapels placed at the heart of the compound, staircases aligned with celestial points, and carvings of crosses and cryptic motifs in positions that may have conveyed secret messages. Some scholars argue that these features were purely ornamental, a display of devotion, but others see them as deliberate codes, instructions for those who knew how to interpret them. It is tempting to imagine that within the walls of a fortress, one might walk a corridor and encounter a symbol that directs the initiated to a hidden chamber, where a sacred relic waits in silence. Beyond their architectural ingenuity, the fortresses also served as hubs of intelligence and communication. Templar knights were not only warriors, they were observers, messengers, and strategists. From their strongholds, they could monitor trade routes, coordinate the transport of pilgrims and treasures, and even relay messages across continents. Couriers traveled along secret paths, guarded by knights who were both skilled in combat and trained in discretion. The fortresses were, in essence, nodes in a vast network, enabling the Templars to move information, wealth, and sacred relics with a precision that few could rival. Some fortresses, like the famed Temple of Paris, became legendary in their own right. Their walls had witnessed countless battles, sieges, and political intrigues. They were places where loyalty was tested, where knights faced moral dilemmas, and where the most sacred secrets were kept under lock and oath. It is in such fortresses that the Templars' reputation for discipline and secrecy reached its peak. Every stone, every corridor, every hidden alcove served a purpose, whether practical, spiritual, or both. And within these walls, the knights cultivated a culture of trust, vigilance, and devotion that would endure even as the world outside turned against them. The legend of the Grail is intertwined with these fortresses. Chroniclers centuries later hinted at subterranean vaults, secret tunnels, and hidden chapels where sacred objects were guarded. While some dismissed these accounts as exaggeration, the consistency of the descriptions across multiple sources is striking. There are reports of tunnels stretching beneath entire fortresses, accessible only by those who knew their precise paths. Some tunnels reportedly led to wells, cisterns, or hidden chambers where the air was cool and the walls lined with inscriptions. Could these subterranean sanctuaries have housed the chalice? It is tantalizing to consider that the Holy Grail, if it existed, might have been hidden not in plain sight but beneath layers of stone, secrecy, and sacred vows. Even the location of the fortresses themselves seems deliberate. Many were placed along pilgrimage routes, strategic trade paths, or near contested borders. They served not only as defensive bastions but as guardians of passage, controlling access to regions of religious and economic significance. The placement was as much about protection as it was about oversight. Those who traveled the roads of Europe and the Holy Land might have seen only stone towers and courtyards, never suspecting the hidden chambers, vaults, or the treasures they concealed. To the outside world, these fortresses were military assets. To the Templars, they were the guardians of history, devotion, and perhaps of divine mystery itself. And yet, for all their ingenuity, these fortresses could not protect the order indefinitely. Political envy, greed, and fear eventually breached even the strongest walls. When King Philip IV of France moved against the Templars, the fortresses were stormed, knights were arrested, and secrets that had been protected for centuries were threatened. Some fortresses were ransacked, treasures seized, and manuscripts destroyed. But others remained hidden, their most sacred contents moved in secret, carried away by surviving knights, or concealed so effectively that even the king's agents could not discover them. It is this partial survival of mystery that has kept the legend alive to this day. The Templar fortresses were more than stone and mortar. They were the physical manifestation of devotion, secrecy, and sacred purpose. Within their walls, knights lived and prayed, trained and strategized, and guarded mysteries that may never be fully known. Among those secrets, the most tantalizing is the Holy Grail, a chalice whose significance transcends material wealth or power. Whether it existed as a physical object or as a symbol of divine knowledge, the Templars treated it with the utmost reverence, hiding it in chambers, tunnels, and sanctuaries designed to confound the uninitiated. And in the echoes of these ancient fortresses, long after the order fell, the question remains: what did they protect, and where did it go when the world turned against them? Legends have a way of lingering in the shadows, growing in the spaces between fact and imagination, and the Templars' connection to the Holy Grail is no exception. Centuries after the fall of the order, scholars, mystics, and treasure hunters have pieced together fragments of evidence, ancient manuscripts, and cryptic carvings to reconstruct the possibility of what the knights may have guarded. The Grail, a chalice said to contain the blood of Christ, was more than a sacred object. It was a symbol of divine authority, a vessel of miraculous power, and perhaps even a key to knowledge that the church and monarchs feared. And while history leaves us only hints, the patterns, symbols, and whispered traditions suggest that the Templars were intimately connected to this most elusive of relics. Some of the earliest references to a sacred chalice are found in medieval texts that predate the Templars themselves. Christian mystics and chroniclers spoke of a vessel associated with miracles, of a cup that could heal the sick, grant visions, and even confer eternal life. By the time the order was established in the Holy Land, these legends had already taken root, circulating among pilgrims, clergy, and knights alike. It is likely that the Templars, devout and vigilant, would have encountered these stories during their service protecting pilgrims along the treacherous roads to Jerusalem. And once they had come into contact with relics from the Holy Land, whether fragments of the true cross, sacred manuscripts, or ceremonial objects, the possibility that they possessed or were entrusted with the Grail itself began to take shape. The legends are often entwined with coded symbolism, much of it hidden in plain sight within Templar architecture. Chapels, towers, and fortresses were decorated with intricate carvings, geometric patterns, enigmatic crosses, and stylized figures that appear ordinary but may encode directions, rituals, or references to sacred objects. Some researchers argue that these symbols were intended to guide the initiated toward hidden chambers or secret vaults. Others suggest that they were mnemonic devices, a way of preserving knowledge in a culture where oral instruction and secrecy were paramount. For the Templars, such symbols may have served a dual purpose. They were devotional art and practical instruction, a roadmap for those sworn to guard the most precious relics of Christendom. Among the most persistent theories is that the Grail was not merely a cup but also a repository of esoteric knowledge. Some medieval mystics and alchemists believed that the chalice held not only Christ's blood but the keys to divine wisdom, encoded in its symbolism and guarded through ritual. The Templars, trained in both spiritual discipline and worldly strategy, may have been the only ones capable of preserving this knowledge safely. It is here that the line between myth and reality blurs. What is often described in legends as miraculous power might have been knowledge, astronomical, theological, or cryptographic, that appeared supernatural to those who did not understand it. The notion that the Templars were custodians of the Grail is reinforced by the mysterious circumstances of their downfall. King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order, accused them of heresy, blasphemy, and immoral conduct in 1307. These charges were, by most historical accounts, fabricated as a pretext to seize the Templars' wealth. But some historians suggest there was a deeper motivation: the suppression of knowledge and artifacts that threatened secular and ecclesiastical authority. If the Templars had been guarding an object or secret of immense power, it would explain the urgency and thoroughness of Philip's actions. Arrests, interrogations, and the destruction of manuscripts indicate a fear not only of wealth but of revelation. Accounts of surviving knights hint at the lengths to which the order went to protect its secrets. Some Templars reportedly escaped to distant lands, carrying with them manuscripts, artifacts, and perhaps even sacred objects. Legends speak of knights traveling to Scotland, Portugal, and the Iberian Peninsula, where remnants of the order persisted in secret. In these remote locations, the knowledge and objects they guarded could have been hidden from prying eyes, their paths known only to the initiated. These stories have fueled centuries of speculation, from clandestine orders to secretive societies that claim to trace their lineage back to the Templars and the Grail. The Grail's legend also intersects with mythic narratives that developed during and after the Templars' era. Arthurian tales, for example, elevate the chalice to a symbol of spiritual perfection, a sacred quest that tests courage, faith, and virtue. Scholars have long debated whether these stories were inspired by Templar practices or whether the order's activities were influenced by the mythic imagery circulating across Europe. In either case, the Grail came to represent both a physical object and a spiritual ideal, a mystery that could only be approached through devotion, discipline, and courage, qualities embodied by the knights themselves. Intriguingly, some Templar manuscripts and marginalia contain enigmatic references that scholars interpret as allusions to hidden relics or sacred knowledge. While most are fragmentary, patterns emerge. Repeated symbols, coded language, and references to divine light, transformation, and eternal life. Whether these refer directly to the Grail or to other sacred objects, they demonstrate that the Templars' concern with secrecy was both practical and spiritual. They were protecting something of immense value, something that transcended the material wealth they accumulated and the military prowess they wielded. Even in the ruins of Templar strongholds, whispers of the Grail persist. Archaeologists and explorers have discovered subterranean chambers, hidden staircases, and crypts that defy easy explanation. Some chambers contain carvings or motifs reminiscent of Grail legends. Others appear deliberately concealed, their entrances blocked or disguised. While many of these findings are inconclusive, they add to the sense that the Order's fortresses were designed not only to defend against human enemies but to safeguard secrets that were too sacred, too dangerous, or too extraordinary to be revealed. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Templars' connection to the Grail is the persistence of the mystery itself. Unlike ordinary treasures, the chalice has never been definitively found. Its absence suggests deliberate concealment and careful protection, characteristics that align perfectly with Templar practices. If the Grail ever existed, it was never meant to be discovered by the uninitiated. Its power, whether spiritual, symbolic, or intellectual, demanded guardians of exceptional discipline, men who could endure hardship, resist temptation, and uphold their vows even in the face of death. The Templars' devotion, secrecy, and strategic genius make them the perfect custodians for such a relic. Their fortresses, coded symbols, and careful cataloging of treasures were not merely practical measures. They were part of a system designed to ensure that the most sacred knowledge or objects would survive the centuries, even if the world around them fell into chaos. And in the centuries since the Order's suppression, the legend of the Grail has continued to inspire awe, curiosity, and obsession, a testament to the enduring power of the mysteries the Templars once safeguarded. Ultimately, the Templars' connection to the Grail is a story of devotion, danger, and secrecy. Whether the chalice was a literal cup, a repository of divine wisdom, or both, it symbolizes the extraordinary lengths to which men will go to protect what they believe is sacred. The Order's fall, their persecution, and the survival of whispers and legends remind us that some mysteries are never truly lost. They endure, hidden in shadows, waiting for those brave enough to seek them, patient across the centuries, silent yet eternally compelling. After the dramatic arrest of the Templars in 1307, the world seemed to believe that the Order had been extinguished. Yet, for those who understood the Order's inner workings, it was clear that the story was far from over. Knights who had survived the initial purge vanished into the shadows, taking with them the knowledge, wealth, and possibly the sacred relics they had spent decades safeguarding. These survivors were no longer part of a formal organization, but their purpose remained unchanged: to protect the secrets of the Templars at all costs. Their journeys became clandestine, marked by secrecy, careful planning, and extraordinary courage in the face of relentless pursuit. The escape routes used by these knights were as ingenious as they were perilous. Many fled north to Scotland and the remote reaches of the Iberian Peninsula, while others moved to the coastlines of Portugal, seeking refuge in fortresses still sympathetic to their cause. The order had anticipated the possibility of such persecution, and over decades, had established safe houses, hidden passages, and secret networks of allies. Couriers carried messages encoded in ciphers, instructing surviving knights where to travel, which routes were safe, and how to conceal any sacred objects they might carry. Each journey was a test of endurance, intelligence, and loyalty, with the knowledge that capture could mean torture, imprisonment, or death. The stakes were higher than mere survival. Among the treasures that may have been carried were relics of immense spiritual and historical significance, the most tantalizing of which was the Holy Grail. The chalice's importance cannot be overstated. It represented not only divine authority, but also the culmination of centuries of religious devotion, mystical tradition, and, perhaps, hidden knowledge. For the Templars, its protection was a sacred duty, one that justified the risks of flight across hostile lands and through the labyrinthine politics of medieval Europe. Their actions were guided by an unshakable belief that some secrets were too powerful, too transformative, to fall into the hands of kings, popes, or common thieves. Historical records hint at the extraordinary measures taken to conceal these treasures. Knights traveling through France and Spain reportedly carried items wrapped in layers of cloth, hidden beneath carts or in barrels destined for ordinary markets. Some accounts suggest that tunnels, long forgotten and partially collapsed, were used to transport objects under city streets, past guards, and beyond the eyes of inquisitive neighbors. Each step of the journey was fraught with danger, yet each knight carried with them the same unwavering discipline and faith that had defined the order at its height. Their movement was meticulous, precise, and often nearly invisible, as if the relics themselves were cloaked in the very shadows they traversed. The secrecy of these journeys fueled rumors, legends, and whispered tales that would persist for centuries. In some cases, the surviving knights were said to have established hidden enclaves in remote regions, where they could live quietly while safeguarding the order's most important treasures. Stories from Portugal, Scotland, and even distant parts of Eastern Europe speak of secret gatherings, private chapels, and cryptic manuscripts that only a select few could access. These enclaves were likely small and highly disciplined, with every member sworn to absolute silence. The purpose of such secrecy was not only protection but also continuity. The knowledge and devotion of the Templars had to survive, even if the order itself had been destroyed in public view. The survivors' journeys were not merely logistical challenges. They were spiritual tests. Carrying sacred relics, navigating hostile territories, and evading capture required not only courage but also discipline, faith, and moral clarity. A knight could not falter, for a single mistake might endanger not only himself but the relics, the mission, and the legacy of the order. The Templars' vows, forged in the cloisters and battlefields of the Holy Land, were now tested in ways few could imagine. Each night spent in a forest clearing, each river crossed in darkness, and each encounter with potential enemies became a meditation in vigilance, devotion, and survival. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of the Templars' secret journeys lies in the legends that have endured. Tales of hidden treasures, mysterious disappearances, and unexplained fortifications appear in historical records long after the official dissolution of the order. Some of these stories hint at objects transported across seas, hidden in monasteries, or buried in secret locations known only to a handful of survivors. Archaeological evidence, though fragmentary, occasionally aligns with these accounts. Subterranean tunnels, concealed chambers, and enigmatic symbols in Templar ruins that suggest intentional concealment of objects of extraordinary importance. Each discovery fuels speculation and underscores the extraordinary lengths to which the Templars went to protect their secrets. The Holy Grail, if it was among the items carried, would have required unparalleled care. Its symbolic and spiritual significance made it a target for the ambitious, the greedy, and the curious. Legends suggest that the chalice was never placed in a location accessible to the general public. It was concealed behind hidden walls, within crypts, or transported under strict secrecy from fortress to fortress. The surviving knights would have been responsible for its security, relying on decades of training, ritual, and strategic thinking to ensure that it remained hidden from all who might misuse or desecrate it. The Grail, in their hands, became both a sacred duty and a living test of faith. As the Knights moved, Europe itself was changing. Political boundaries shifted, kingdoms rose and fell, and the Church sought to consolidate its authority. Yet through all this turmoil, the Templars' survivors adapted, blending into local communities, assuming new identities, and maintaining the secrecy of their mission. Their ability to navigate both the spiritual and the political landscapes of Europe was remarkable. They were ghosts in the medieval world, silent custodians of treasures and secrets that may have been beyond the comprehension of kings and clergy alike. It is in this period of clandestine movement that the Templar legacy became shrouded in myth. From Scotland's misty highlands to Portugal's hidden valleys, from secretive monasteries to the ruins of French castles, stories of hidden treasures and sacred relics persist. Some suggest that the Grail itself was eventually hidden in a location so remote, so well guarded, that it has never been found. Others propose that the chalice's spiritual power lay not in the object itself, but in the faith and discipline of those sworn to protect it. In either case, the journeys of the surviving Templars ensured that the mystery endured, leaving a trail of legend, speculation, and awe that continues to captivate the imagination to this day. Ultimately, the Templars' secretive journeys reveal an order that was more than a military or religious institution. They were custodians of knowledge, guardians of sacred relics, and navigators of a perilous world in which every step carried both physical and spiritual risk. Their perseverance, courage, and discipline in the face of overwhelming adversity ensured that their mysteries, particularly the Grail, were not lost, even when the world believed the order had vanished. And so, across centuries, the question remains: where did the surviving Templars take their treasures, and what truths did they carry into the shadows, beyond the reach of kings, popes, and history itself? Beyond their fortresses, battles, and treasures, the Templars were masters of knowledge hidden in plain sight. Their libraries and codices were more than collections of religious texts. They were repositories of secret wisdom, mystical teachings, and perhaps even instructions for rituals connected to the Holy Grail. Scholars have long noted that the surviving fragments of Templar manuscripts often contain cryptic annotations, symbols, and diagrams that defy conventional understanding. These were not random decorations or idle scribbles. They were deliberate codes, intended to protect knowledge from those uninitiated, preserving insights too sacred or too dangerous to be shared openly. The nature of this knowledge remains one of the most compelling mysteries of the Templars. Some historians suggest it involved advanced understanding of geometry, astronomy, and sacred architecture. Certain manuscripts hint at mathematical codes embedded within the layout of churches and fortresses, linking celestial alignments to symbolic rituals. Could these codes have guided knights in locating hidden chambers or relics? Or did they serve a more spiritual purpose, connecting the physical and divine through intricate patterns, ritualized movement, and secret signs? The Templars' obsession with precision, order, and symbolism suggests that the answer lies somewhere between practical strategy and mystical devotion. The most tantalizing manuscripts hint at the Grail itself. While no surviving document directly names it, references to a sacred vessel, the cup of light, or the blood of the chosen appear in marginalia, cryptic notes, and allegorical illustrations. Some scholars argue these were symbolic meditations, reflecting spiritual ideals rather than physical objects. Yet the meticulous care with which these references were preserved, often hidden within texts otherwise devoted to mundane religious instruction, suggests something more. It is possible that these manuscripts were maps, rituals, or instructions meant only for the initiated, guiding them toward objects, knowledge, or truths of profound significance. The Templars' use of coded language extended beyond manuscripts to everyday objects and symbols. A cross carved in a chapel, a sequence of stones in a wall, or a subtle architectural flourish could serve as an indicator of hidden chambers, ritual spaces, or valuable relics. These codes were highly sophisticated, often requiring years of training and initiation to interpret correctly. For the uninitiated, they appeared decorative or arbitrary. For the Templars, they were a precise language of secrecy and devotion. This duality, apparent simplicity masking profound depth, underscores the Order's mastery of concealment and strategy. Some manuscripts hint at the Templars' knowledge of rituals, possibly connected to the Grail or other sacred relics. Descriptions of ceremonial preparation, prayers, and symbolic gestures appear alongside geometric diagrams and encoded instructions. While the exact purpose of these rituals is unknown, they appear designed to transform the participants spiritually, aligning mind, body, and soul in preparation for contact with the sacred. Whether these rituals were practical, mystical, or both remains a subject of debate, but their existence reinforces the idea that the Templars' mission went beyond military defense and material wealth. They were custodians of a spiritual and esoteric tradition. The danger associated with this knowledge cannot be overstated. During the arrests of 1307, chroniclers noted that some manuscripts were deliberately destroyed or hidden before inquisitors could seize them. Knights reportedly risked imprisonment, torture, or death to prevent these secrets from falling into the wrong hands. This level of commitment suggests that the knowledge was considered more valuable than gold, power, or even life itself. In this context, it is easy to understand why legends persist of Templar treasures and rituals designed to protect something transcendent, perhaps even the Grail. The secrecy surrounding the Templars' knowledge also fostered a culture of initiation and loyalty. New members were gradually introduced to increasingly profound insights, with access tightly controlled. Knowledge was transmitted orally, through symbolic instruction, and through practical application. This ensured that only those who had proven their devotion and reliability could access the Order's deepest secrets. The Grail, if it was indeed a physical object in their care, would have been entrusted only to those whose loyalty, faith, and discipline were beyond question. Every manuscript, symbol, and ritual served as a safeguard for both the object and the sacred wisdom associated with it. Across Europe, Templar manuscripts hint at connections between sacred architecture, celestial patterns, and hidden relics. Some scholars propose that the Order integrated astronomy, mathematics, and geometry into their rituals and designs, creating a system in which sacred objects could be located or protected according to cosmic principles. These patterns, encoded in stone and ink, reflect a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between the physical and spiritual worlds. To the uninitiated, these details may appear as mere coincidence or artistic flourish, but for the Templars, they were deliberate, essential, and perhaps the key to unlocking the mysteries of the Grail. The Templars' esoteric knowledge extended to symbols that continue to capture the imagination today. Pentagrams, circles, cryptic crosses, and stylized letters appear repeatedly in manuscripts, fortresses, and churches associated with the Order. Modern researchers have attempted to decode these symbols, proposing interpretations ranging from spiritual meditation to practical instructions for hiding or transporting relics. While definitive answers remain elusive, the consistency of these symbols across regions and centuries suggests a deliberate system of communication, carefully designed to survive persecution and the ravages of time. Some historians even speculate that the Templars' manuscripts may have contained knowledge that could challenge established authority, both spiritual and temporal. If the Grail or other sacred relics were understood not only as objects but as sources of esoteric knowledge, the Order's secrecy becomes understandable. Protecting these items would have required extraordinary measures, including coded manuscripts, symbolic architecture, and a disciplined hierarchy that ensured information was revealed only to the worthy. In this light, the Templars' downfall appears less like a random political purge and more like a confrontation with forces fearful of what the Order knew and protected. The enduring mystery of Templar manuscripts and their coded knowledge has inspired countless theories, from secret societies claiming lineage to alchemical interpretations of sacred symbols. Whether one believes the Grail was a literal cup or a symbol of higher knowledge, the manuscripts testify to the Order's intellectual and spiritual sophistication. They reveal a brotherhood not only devoted to combat and faith, but to the preservation of knowledge so powerful and sacred that it could not be entrusted to the world at large. Ultimately, the Templars' hidden knowledge, preserved in manuscripts, symbols, and rituals, serves as a testament to their devotion, discipline, and extraordinary foresight. These documents hint at a reality where sacred relics and esoteric wisdom were intertwined, protected by one of history's most secretive and disciplined orders. The Grail, whether literal or symbolic, is at the heart of this mystery, an object or concept so precious that the Templars were willing to risk everything, life, wealth, and freedom, to safeguard it. Their manuscripts endure as silent witnesses, carrying the whispers of an order that understood the true cost of protecting what the world was not yet ready to see. Rituals were the heartbeat of the Templar order. Beneath the austere robes and disciplined marches, there existed a world of sacred ceremonies, carefully choreographed prayers, and mysterious rites whose full meaning was known only to the initiated. While the order's public persona emphasized military prowess and pious devotion, its rituals revealed a deeper purpose: the cultivation of spiritual discipline, the transmission of secret knowledge, and perhaps even contact with relics of divine power, including the Holy Grail. These ceremonies were not mere formalities. They were meticulously designed experiences, blending symbolism, devotion, and esoteric instruction into a singular, transformative practice. The initiation of a knight was itself a ritual of profound significance. New members swore vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and loyalty. Yet beneath these familiar promises lay additional layers of spiritual and mystical instruction. Initiates were exposed to allegorical teachings, symbolic gestures, and carefully guarded secrets, all designed to instill not only obedience but wisdom. Some chroniclers hint at veiled references to sacred objects, mysterious vessels, and divine light, allegories that may have served as indirect instruction about the Grail or other hidden relics. To a lay observer, these rituals would appear ordinary, but for the initiate, every gesture, word, and symbol was charged with meaning. Templar rituals often occurred within the sanctity of their fortresses, in chapels deliberately designed to amplify the sacred experience. The architecture itself was part of the ceremony. Stairs, corridors, and chambers were aligned with the rising sun or specific stars, symbolically connecting the terrestrial and the divine. Hidden alcoves, crypts, and subterranean chambers provided spaces for more secretive rites, where only the most trusted knights could enter. In these hidden sanctuaries, knights may have performed ceremonies that involved relics, coded texts, and the careful recitation of prayers in a ritualized sequence, practices intended to preserve both faith and knowledge. The secrecy of Templar rituals cannot be overstated. Even among members, knowledge was compartmentalized. One knight might witness part of a ceremony but remain unaware of its ultimate purpose. Another might understand its symbolic meaning but not its practical applications. This ensured that the order's deepest mysteries, especially those connected to sacred relics like the Grail, were never fully revealed to a single individual, protecting both the object and its knowledge. The structure of these rituals reflects a careful balance of trust, discipline, and spiritual insight, a system designed to survive even if the world turned hostile. Some surviving manuscripts and reports hint at ceremonies involving objects of immense significance. Knights were instructed in the handling of relics, the positioning of sacred vessels, and the performance of precise sequences of gestures and prayers. While the exact nature of these objects remains unclear, it is easy to imagine that the Holy Grail, if it was under Templar protection, would have been central to these rites. The attention to detail in these rituals suggests that they were not only spiritual exercises but practical instructions for safeguarding, venerating, and understanding sacred power. The symbolism embedded within these rituals extended beyond the immediate act of worship. Light, shadow, geometry, and sacred orientation were all carefully orchestrated. For example, certain ceremonies may have involved the reflection of sunlight on a chalice, the alignment of a sacred vessel with specific architectural elements, or the use of cryptic symbols to convey meaning to the initiated. These practices reinforce the notion that the physical and spiritual worlds were interconnected, and that objects like the Grail were more than material. They were conduits of divine influence, accessible only to those prepared through ritual discipline and secret knowledge. Mystics and chroniclers of the time suggest that some Templar rituals may have involved meditation, fasting, or symbolic reenactments of biblical events. These practices were intended to heighten spiritual awareness and deepen the connection between the knight and the divine. It is possible that such rites prepared the knights for encounters with relics, or even for the guardianship of the Grail, training them to approach the sacred with reverence, discipline, and insight. The rituals were thus both protective and transformative, ensuring that the Order's most valuable secrets were in the hands of those spiritually and morally capable of safeguarding them. The Templars' use of secrecy extended even to their ceremonial texts. Manuscripts describing rituals were often written in coded language, obscured with allegory, or deliberately incomplete to outsiders. Only those initiated into higher degrees of the Order could interpret the full meaning, while the uninitiated would see nothing more than religious ornamentation or symbolic story. This practice ensured that knowledge, rituals, and the location of sacred objects could survive even if the Order faced persecution, as it ultimately did. The careful preservation of ritual knowledge was an insurance policy against the chaos of the outside world. Legends suggest that the Templars' rituals occasionally included the veneration of specific objects said to hold extraordinary power. Chroniclers describe ceremonies in which chalices were treated with reverence, touched only by those of proven faith and loyalty, and concealed after the ritual with elaborate care. Could these descriptions point to the Grail itself? It is impossible to know for certain, yet the level of secrecy, discipline, and symbolic complexity surrounding Templar rituals indicates that such an object, if it existed, would have been approached with extraordinary care, and its guardians would have been trained in both physical and spiritual protection. The fall of the Templars did not erase these rituals. In many ways, it amplified their mystique. Survivors carried their knowledge into exile, preserving the ceremonial practices in secret enclaves across Europe. While some rituals may have been adapted or simplified, the essence remained. Preparation for sacred duty, protection of relics, and cultivation of spiritual discipline. These clandestine ceremonies ensured that even as the Order was publicly dismantled, its knowledge, its devotion, and its mysteries endured, hidden in plain sight, accessible only to those trained to understand them. Ultimately, Templar rituals were a bridge between the earthly and the divine, between the visible and the hidden. They were a mechanism to train knights, safeguard knowledge, and protect sacred objects, possibly including the Grail. They remind us that the Templars were not simply warriors. They were custodians of a profound spiritual and esoteric tradition, one that required discipline, secrecy, and unwavering faith. And in the shadows of ruined fortresses, hidden chambers, and manuscripts, echoes of these rituals endure, hinting at a reality in which devotion, knowledge, and the sacred were inseparable. In understanding these rituals, we glimpse a world where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, where a simple act of prayer could conceal profound secrets, and where a chalice might hold not only symbolic meaning but the key to mysteries deemed too dangerous for the wider world. The Templar ceremonies were more than ritual. They were an expression of purpose, an embodiment of secrecy, and a testament to the enduring power of faith, discipline, and guardianship. And in these ceremonies, the faint possibility of the Grail's presence persists, a silent witness to a world that has long since vanished, yet continues to captivate the imagination. The allure of the Grail extends beyond the stone walls of Templar fortresses and the secretive corridors of their rituals. Across medieval Europe, stories of a sacred cup imbued with miraculous power circulated in whispers, song, and manuscript, capturing the imaginations of knights, clergy, and commoners alike. These legends, growing over centuries, formed the foundation of what we now call the Grail mythology. The Templars, living at the intersection of the mystical and the martial, were uniquely positioned to become intertwined with these tales, their secretive existence providing fertile ground for rumor, speculation, and myth-making. One of the earliest literary references comes from Chrétien de Troyes, a French poet writing in the late 12th century. In his unfinished romance Perceval, the story of the Grail, he describes a mysterious, radiant vessel associated with divine power. Though Chrétien never names it the Holy Grail, the imagery of a sacred cup and the spiritual journey of the protagonist set the stage for centuries of legend. Scholars have long speculated that he may have been influenced by knowledge circulating among the Templars or by the accounts of pilgrims returning from the Holy Land. The parallels between his descriptions and Templar symbolism are striking. Secrecy, sacred purpose, and the idea that the worthy must undertake a perilous quest to approach the divine. other medieval accounts, often written in cloistered monasteries or within the shadowed halls of noble courts, reinforced the mystique of the Grail. Chroniclers described it as a cup that could heal, grant wisdom, and bestow eternal favor. These descriptions, though often allegorical, suggest an object of immense significance, one that could inspire both devotion and envy. The Templars, with their reputation for guardianship of sacred relics, naturally became associated with these stories. Could it be that they were not merely participants in the myth but custodians of the very object at its center? The timing of these legends, coinciding with the height of the Order's power in Europe and the Holy Land, adds a layer of tantalizing plausibility. The Grail's connection to Templar secrecy is further reinforced by geographical coincidences. Many legends place the Grail in regions where Templars held fortresses or estates. Southern France, northern Spain, and the remote highlands of Scotland. Hidden valleys, isolated monasteries, and fortified castles provided the perfect environment for both real and imagined guardianship. The Templars' meticulous record-keeping, coded manuscripts, and subterranean constructions offered a framework in which the Grail could plausibly be concealed. Even today, explorers and historians are drawn to these sites, following traces of walls, tunnels, and cryptic carvings that suggest deliberate concealment of something extraordinary. The evolution of Grail mythology also reflects the interplay of spiritual and earthly concerns. On one hand, the chalice symbolizes divine grace, enlightenment, and the ultimate spiritual quest. On the other, it represents wealth, power, and authority in a tangible form. For the Templars, who navigated both martial and religious worlds, these dualities would have been particularly resonant. Their role as protectors of pilgrims and relics, combined with their financial acumen and international network, positioned them perfectly to straddle the line between the mystical and the practical. The Grail, then, becomes not just a mythic object but a focal point of faith, secrecy, and earthly intrigue, a symbol whose guardianship demanded exceptional courage and cunning. Legends of the Grail also often describe tests of worthiness. Knights must prove themselves morally, spiritually, and sometimes physically before they can approach it. These narratives echo the Templars' own rigorous initiation and disciplinary practices. The alignment is uncanny. The challenges faced by Grail seekers in medieval romances mirror the trials a knight would endure to earn access to the Order's most sacred secrets. Whether these parallels are coincidence, literary invention, or evidence of real-world influence is impossible to determine with certainty. Yet the resemblance strengthens the notion that the Templars, knowingly or not, became intertwined with the Grail legend in the medieval imagination. Some accounts even suggest that the Grail could vanish, appear, or move according to divine will. This ephemeral quality aligns with Templar secrecy. The object's location was never fixed, always shifting, protected, and hidden, accessible only to those prepared to encounter it with reverence and understanding. Chronicles mention vessels appearing in unexpected places, guarded by mysterious knights or concealed in remote chapels. Could these stories reflect real events in which the Templars relocated sacred relics to protect them from persecution? Or were they allegorical reflections of the spiritual journey required to comprehend divine mysteries? The ambiguity itself is part of the Grail's enduring allure. The Grail's symbolism evolved further in later works, particularly in the Arthurian cycle. Authors like Wolfram von Eschenbach and Robert de Boron expanded upon the imagery, linking the chalice to Christ's blood, mystical kingdoms, and ultimate redemption. In these narratives, the Grail's guardianship becomes a sacred responsibility, a theme that resonates with the Templars' historical mission. The blending of historical knights and literary archetypes may have reinforced public perception that the Templars were protectors of a real, tangible sacred object. Over centuries, this merging of myth and reality solidified the Templars' legendary connection to the Grail, making them central figures in one of the most enduring legends of Western culture. The Grail legend also interacts with Templar architecture and hidden symbolism. Researchers note that certain Templar churches, chapels, and castles contain design elements that mirror descriptions from Grail romances. Hidden chambers, cryptic inscriptions, and geometrical patterns that could have served both spiritual and practical purposes. While it is impossible to prove a direct link, the consistency of these elements suggests a deliberate interplay between the Templars' sacred mission and the mythic framework surrounding the Grail. Architecture becomes both a protective measure and a storytelling device, embedding the legend into stone, mortar, and subterranean passageways. Ultimately, the Templars' association with the Grail is a story of faith, secrecy, and enduring mystery. Their rigorous discipline, hidden knowledge, and careful guardianship of sacred objects made them the perfect vessels through which the myth could survive, and perhaps even reflect a deeper reality. Whether the Grail was ever a physical chalice or a symbolic repository of divine wisdom, the Templars' involvement imbues the legend with tangible historical weight. Their fortresses, manuscripts, and rituals leave traces of a world in which the pursuit of the sacred was inseparable from secrecy, courage, and unwavering devotion. In tracing these medieval accounts, we are reminded that legends often arise where history and mystery intersect. The Grail's story persists not only because of its spiritual significance, but because it has been carefully protected, interpreted, and transmitted through generations of devoted guardians. In this context, the Templars emerge not just as warriors or monks, but as custodians of one of the most powerful and enduring myths in Western history. A myth that continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and a sense of the sublime even centuries after the Order's disappearance. The architecture of the Templars holds secrets written not in ink, but in stone. Across Europe, their castles, chapels, and fortresses are embedded with cryptic symbols, geometric patterns, and hidden chambers whose purpose is still debated by historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts. These sites were more than functional structures for defense or worship. They were carefully designed maps, keys, and repositories for knowledge and sacred relics. Every archway, corridor, and carved symbol could serve as a guide, a warning, or a code, understood only by those initiated into the mysteries of the Order. The precision of Templar design is striking. In castles like Château de Geysers in France, scholars have noted the alignment of walls and tunnels with celestial events, echoing the symbolic importance of the sun, moon, and stars. Some chambers are oriented to capture the first rays of sunlight at dawn on particular feast days, illuminating hidden inscriptions or sacred objects. This interplay of light and architecture suggests a deliberate effort to merge physical and spiritual understanding, embedding knowledge within the very bones of the structure. Such ingenuity indicates that the Templars were not only builders and warriors, but also practitioners of a sophisticated symbolic language, one that preserved secrecy and encoded wisdom for generations. Carvings and inscriptions provide another layer of intrigue. Across Templar sites, one finds crosses, pentagrams, serpents, and other enigmatic symbols, often hidden in corners, crypts, or behind staircases. While some of these images likely had conventional religious significance, many appear deliberately cryptic, hinting at esoteric meanings or coded instructions. In some cases, symbols are repeated in patterns that suggest a deliberate system, perhaps a map to hidden chambers, a record of sacred relics, or an instruction for ritual practice. Modern researchers continue to debate their meaning, yet the consistency across distant sites implies a unified, intentional design, a silent communication between Templars that survived centuries of secrecy and suppression. Hidden chambers and passageways amplify the sense of mystery. Many Templar fortresses were constructed with subterranean vaults, secret staircases, and concealed rooms, often accessible only to those who knew the precise combination of symbols or the correct sequence of steps. Archaeologists have discovered concealed doors that require the manipulation of stones, tiles, or levers in specific orders, suggesting that these mechanisms were designed to protect objects or knowledge of great importance. Some historians speculate that the Holy Grail, if it ever came into Templar custody, would have been placed in such a chamber, accessible only to the most trusted knights and fully hidden from outsiders. Geometric codes are another remarkable feature of Templar architecture. Some studies suggest that certain fortresses and chapels were designed according to sacred geometry, with proportions, angles, and spatial relationships reflecting cosmological principles. These geometries may have served practical purposes, such as reinforcing the structure, but they also likely held symbolic meaning, linking the physical space to spiritual truths. The use of geometry in combination with coded symbols, hidden chambers, and ritual alignments reinforces the idea that Templar sites were multidimensional tools, simultaneously fortresses, places of worship, and repositories of secret knowledge. One striking example is the Convent of Christ in Tomar, Portugal. Successors of the Templar order, the Knights of Christ, preserved much of the original Templar architectural knowledge. Hidden corridors, spiral staircases, and intricately carved portals seem to encode directions, ceremonial instructions, or references to sacred relics. Scholars and enthusiasts alike have speculated that these features could indicate hidden vaults containing relics, manuscripts, or even the Grail itself. The interplay of light, shadow, and symbolic design suggests that these constructions were not merely defensive or aesthetic. They were deliberate, coded landscapes of knowledge and devotion. Some carvings hint at Templar connections to mystical and religious traditions beyond conventional Christianity. Symbols reminiscent of alchemy, ancient astrology, and esoteric numerology appear alongside Christian iconography, hinting at a syncretic approach to knowledge and ritual. This combination of practical, spiritual, and mystical design suggests that the Templars viewed the world as interconnected, a place where divine truth, sacred objects, and hidden wisdom were inseparable, and where architecture could encode the very keys to understanding. These elements were intentionally veiled, accessible only to those trained to interpret them. Even in France, the ruins of Templar sites are rich with hidden symbolism. At Geysers, a series of subterranean chambers and cryptic markings have sparked centuries of speculation. Some researchers propose that these were used to hide treasures and sacred objects during the persecution of the order. Others argue that they served as ritual spaces, with symbolic geometry and iconography guiding ceremonial practices. The consistency of these hidden spaces across multiple Templar sites suggests a shared knowledge system, an underground network of meaning and protection, carefully maintained and transmitted by the knights themselves. The combination of hidden chambers, coded symbols, and geometric design served not only to protect but to educate. Knights who had access to these spaces were implicitly trained in the symbolic language of the order. Every step through a corridor, every inscription on a wall, and every alignment with light or celestial phenomena was a lesson, a test, and a preparation for the guardianship of knowledge or relics. This architecture was a living classroom, designed to transmit discipline, secrecy, and devotion alongside practical skills. It was simultaneously protective and instructional, a silent teacher to those capable of understanding. Finally, Templar architecture reminds us that the Order's greatest achievements may not have been martial or financial, but intellectual and spiritual. Fortresses, chapels, and hidden chambers were more than defense or storage. They were repositories of secrets, encoded lessons, and sacred connections. The Templars' use of stone, light, and symbol reveals a world where faith, knowledge, and secrecy converged, creating spaces that were as enigmatic as they were functional. Even centuries later, their structures continue to evoke awe, mystery, and curiosity, standing as silent witnesses to an order whose devotion to safeguarding the sacred transcended life, time, and even the reach of kings and popes. In tracing these hidden signs and secret architectures, one realizes that the Templars were not merely protectors of relics. They were architects of mystery itself. Every stone, symbol, and secret corridor was a testament to their understanding of the world as a place of hidden knowledge and sacred responsibility. And within this silent, coded landscape, the possibility of treasures, perhaps even the Holy Grail, remains alive, concealed by design, preserved by devotion, and waiting for those capable of reading the language the knights left behind. The Templars were not only masters of secrecy within their fortresses. Their influence extended across borders, kingdoms, and continents, creating a network that was both practical and mysterious. From the bustling ports of the Mediterranean to the quiet villages of Northern Europe, the Order maintained connections that allowed them to move men, money, and knowledge with remarkable efficiency. This network was invisible to outsiders, a web of loyalty, coded correspondence, and trust that ensured the Templars could operate independently of kings, popes, or rival factions. The sophistication of this system made them both powerful and enigmatic, capable of safeguarding treasures, knowledge, and sacred relics with unparalleled discipline. Communication within this network relied on subtle signals, letters coded with symbols, and messengers who traveled incognito across dangerous territories. Knights were trained to recognize these signs, from carvings etched into doorways to arrangements of stones marking hidden paths. Some messages were verbal, carried in the form of riddles or allegories, ensuring that even if intercepted, the information remained incomprehensible to anyone uninitiated. This network enabled the Templars to maintain oversight of distant estates, fortresses, and ports, while simultaneously coordinating the transfer of valuables or sacred objects with secrecy and precision. The movement of treasures across Europe was particularly remarkable. Gold, silver, and precious relics were frequently transported to protect them from hostile forces, whether political, ecclesiastical, or criminal. Ships, caravans, and couriers were carefully planned to avoid detection, often using obscure routes known only to Templars and trusted allies. Some accounts describe elaborate strategies, such as false shipments, decoy convoys, or buried caches, designed to confuse potential thieves or inquisitors. These operations required discipline, intelligence, and meticulous planning, highlighting the Order's reputation not merely as warriors but as strategists, logisticians, and guardians of secrets. But the network extended beyond material treasures. Knowledge, too, was transmitted with extraordinary care. Manuscripts, coded texts, and oral traditions moved along the same hidden paths as gold and relics. Certain knights were designated as custodians of information, responsible for carrying instructions, interpretations, or rituals to distant cells of the Order. In some cases, this meant traveling across treacherous seas or hostile lands, guided only by trust, intuition, and an unbreakable code of secrecy. The network was thus both practical and spiritual, a living system designed to preserve the Templars' mission even in the face of persecution. The geographic reach of the Templars' network is staggering. In addition to France, Portugal, and the Iberian Peninsula, the Order established cells in Scotland, Ireland, England, and the Holy Land. Each location was connected through a system of estates, fortresses, and outposts, each serving dual purposes: defensive stronghold and secret repository. Travelers passing through these regions often noticed the efficiency and discipline of the knights, unaware that beneath the surface, an intricate web of communication and protection was quietly at work. These connections allowed the Templars to respond to threats, move treasures, and maintain oversight over their global operations, all while remaining largely invisible to outsiders. One of the most intriguing aspects of this network is its apparent role in protecting sacred relics, possibly including the Grail. Chroniclers hint at objects being transported under heavy guard to secure locations far from prying eyes. Some relics were moved from France to Portugal or Spain, hidden within chapels, vaults, or remote estates. The routes, often obscured by natural barriers or deliberately concealed passages, ensured that the treasures could not be discovered easily. It is tempting to imagine the Grail itself, carried along these secret paths, protected by knights sworn to secrecy and trained in both spiritual devotion and tactical ingenuity. The Templars' alliances with sympathetic nobles, clergy, and merchants further strengthened this network. Certain families offered safe havens, secret storage, or logistical support, often motivated by loyalty, shared faith, or mutual benefit. Merchants facilitated the discreet transport of goods and treasures, while clergy provided sanctuary or hidden knowledge. This network of allies extended the reach of the Order far beyond its formal membership, creating a shadow infrastructure that operated alongside the visible medieval world. Even kings and popes were sometimes unaware of the full extent of the Templars' influence. Historical records and legend both hint at the network's complexity. In France, hidden chambers beneath castles are said to have stored gold, manuscripts, and sacred relics, each accessible only to knights who knew the exact sequence of locks, symbols, and rituals. In Portugal, the Convent of Christ contains secret corridors, spiral staircases, and hidden alcoves where treasures and knowledge could be concealed. Scotland and England carry tales of remote fortresses where knights safeguarded manuscripts and relics, moving them only when necessary, always preserving secrecy. This coordination across countries, kingdoms, and climates demonstrates a level of organization that continues to fascinate modern historians. The network also facilitated the transmission of ritual knowledge and esoteric teachings. Initiates traveling from one Templar cell to another could encounter manuscripts, symbols, or ceremonies intended to advance their understanding. The movement of texts, objects, and instructions ensured continuity of training, practice, and interpretation, even in distant lands. This preservation of knowledge was crucial, particularly as political pressures and persecution threatened to destroy the order. It reinforced the Templars' identity as custodians not just of wealth, but of wisdom, sacred practice, and spiritual legacy. The downfall of the Templars began not on the battlefield, but in the shadowy corridors of politics and intrigue. By the early 14th century, the order's wealth, power, and independence had grown to a level that stirred envy, suspicion, and fear among kings and church officials alike. King Philip IV of France, deeply indebted to the Templars and wary of their influence, viewed the order as a threat to his authority. For him, their vast estates, international network, and secretive operations were not signs of piety or loyalty. They were a challenge to his power, a kingdom within a kingdom. The seeds of betrayal were sown not by external enemies of the faith, but by human greed and ambition. In October 1307, the king enacted a carefully orchestrated plan. Under the cover of darkness, Templar knights across France were arrested, accused of heresy, blasphemy, and unnatural practices. The charges were severe, designed to shock the public and justify extreme measures, but historians widely agree they were largely fabricated. Knights were forced to confess under torture, their words twisted into damning evidence. Monasteries were raided, treasures seized, and secret chambers opened to inquisitors who could only begin to comprehend what they discovered. What knowledge and relics survived remains one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. The arrests were brutal and precise. Knights were dragged from their homes and fortresses, often shackled and beaten, their reputations and vows shattered overnight. Eyewitness accounts describe the fear that gripped those loyal to the order, a mixture of disbelief and terror. Men who had dedicated their lives to faith and service were suddenly treated as enemies of God. Families of the knights were left in despair, and the once proud order seemed to crumble under the weight of false accusations. Yet in the midst of fear and chaos, whispers of hidden treasures and secret knowledge persisted, hinting that the Templars' most precious secrets were never fully exposed. King Philip's strategy was ruthless. He used the machinery of the church to legitimize his actions, pressuring Pope Clement V to endorse the arrests and suppress the order. The Pope, caught between loyalty to Christendom and political necessity, reluctantly agreed to the dissolution of the Templars. By 1312, the order was officially disbanded, their properties confiscated, and their knights scattered or imprisoned. Yet even in official decrees and chronicles, there is a lingering sense of unease. The Templars' power had been curtailed, but the full story of their knowledge, treasures, and possible guardianship of relics like the Grail remained shrouded in mystery. The destruction of the network was neither complete nor immediate. Many Templars fled to distant lands, Portugal, Scotland, and other regions where local rulers or sympathetic allies could provide refuge. In exile, they carried with them manuscripts, symbols, and knowledge that could not be destroyed, ensuring the survival of the order's spiritual and esoteric legacy. Tales of hidden treasure convoys, secret chambers, and buried relics became more urgent, more secretive. If the Grail had been within their custody, it is likely that these displaced knights played a crucial role in moving, concealing, and protecting it. The suppression of the Templars also fueled legends and speculation. Chronicles, letters, and rumors describe knights vanishing into forests, castles with hidden staircases, and crypts sealed with secret mechanisms. Some accounts hint at ritual objects spirited away under the cover of night, carried along routes known only to the initiated. These stories, passed down in fragmented form, suggest that the Templars anticipated the threat and had prepared contingencies to safeguard the Order's most sacred treasures. The blend of fact and legend creates a haunting ambiguity. The Order may have fallen publicly, but its secrets continued to thrive in shadows. The trials themselves were a theater of cruelty and deception. Knights were coerced into admitting heretical acts that they may have never committed. Torture was common, designed to break both body and spirit. Some confessions described desecration of relics, denial of Christ, or participation in bizarre rituals, accounts likely fabricated or exaggerated under duress. Yet the very need to extract confessions hints at the extraordinary knowledge the Templars possessed. These were not ordinary men. They were keepers of secrets powerful enough to inspire fear in kings, popes, and inquisitors. The lengths to which authorities went to extract or suppress this information underscores its significance, though the full extent remains unknowable. Despite persecution, some knights resisted. Small enclaves refused to surrender manuscripts or treasures, hiding them in caves, monasteries, or remote estates. Oral traditions and coded instructions were passed to trusted successors. Even as the Templars' visible presence disappeared, these hidden custodians maintained continuity, preserving both knowledge and faith. The resilience of these networks suggests a level of foresight and discipline unparalleled in medieval Europe. The Order's survival, at least in part, depended on secrecy, loyalty, and the unwavering belief in a mission larger than life itself. The persecution also elevated the Templars' legend. In the minds of contemporaries and later generations, the image of an order destroyed by envy, yet guarding sacred relics, became a narrative of heroism and mystery. The disappearance of wealth, manuscripts, and possible relics only deepened public fascination. Rumors of hidden treasure, secret grail custodians, and surviving knights spread across Europe, becoming the foundation for centuries of myth, speculation, and literary imagination. The persecution that sought to erase the Templars inadvertently immortalized them, their secrets becoming more tantalizing precisely because they were threatened with annihilation. In the aftermath, questions abound. How much knowledge was lost? Which treasures survived? Was the Grail ever in their custody? And if so, where did it go? The collapse of the Order was as dramatic as its rise. A combination of political calculation, greed, and fear. Yet the Templars' legacy endures not only in architecture, manuscripts, or legend, but in the mysteries that continue to fascinate historians, treasure hunters, and seekers of the sacred. The events of 1307 to 1312 mark both an ending and a beginning, the public destruction of an order and the secret continuation of its most profound legacies. The fall of the Templars reminds us that power, secrecy, and devotion are fragile in the face of ambition and fear, yet also extraordinarily resilient. Even when an order is scattered, imprisoned, or persecuted, the knowledge, treasures, and mysteries it guards can endure, hidden in plain sight or secreted in remote refuges. For the Templars, their downfall may have been inevitable, but their secrets, encoded in architecture, rituals, and networks, persist, awaiting discovery by those capable of understanding the silent language they left behind. Yet this network was vulnerable. The arrests of 1307 exposed its limitations, as communication was disrupted and local cells were left isolated. Some treasures were lost, manuscripts destroyed, and rituals suppressed. Yet even in the chaos, the Templars' meticulous systems ensured that much survived. Knights in exile carried knowledge to Portugal, Scotland, and other remote regions, safeguarding the essence of the order. The network had been built not merely for convenience, but for resilience, designed to endure even when the visible order fell. In essence, the Templars' secret network was a mirror of their values. Disciplined, intelligent, and devoted to safeguarding what was sacred. It enabled them to operate in secrecy, protect treasures and relics, transmit esoteric knowledge, and preserve a spiritual mission across continents. The Grail, if it ever existed in their custody, would have been shielded by this very network, traveling hidden routes, stored in secret chambers, and entrusted only to the most devoted knights. Even today, traces of this invisible web remain, etched into architecture, legend, and the meticulous chronicles of a vanished order. The Order's network reminds us that the Templars were not just warriors. They were strategists, scholars, and custodians of mysteries that transcended borders and time. Their ability to maintain communication, secrecy, and devotion across such a vast expanse is a testament to their ingenuity, discipline, and faith. In this network, every fortress, corridor, and hidden vault was a node in a living system, ensuring that knowledge, treasures, and perhaps even the Grail itself could survive the storms of history. Even after the Templars' official suppression, rumors persisted that the Order had hidden treasures of unimaginable value. Gold, silver, sacred relics, and priceless manuscripts were said to have vanished into secret locations, beyond the reach of kings, popes, and inquisitors. These treasures were not merely material wealth. They represented centuries of knowledge, devotion, and spiritual discipline. Among the most tantalizing possibilities was the Holy Grail itself, a vessel imbued with divine significance, said to grant enlightenment, healing, or even immortality. Whether myth or reality, the notion that the Templars had safeguarded such an artifact has haunted historians, treasure hunters, and devotees for centuries. Stories of concealed treasure often place it in the most remote, inaccessible regions of Europe. Forested valleys, rugged mountains, and abandoned castles served as perfect hiding places. Chronicles and later legends describe knights secretly transporting valuables under the cover of night, using hidden tunnels, underground chambers, and cryptic markers to ensure secrecy. Some reports speak of chests buried beneath chapels or secured in fortified vaults, accessible only to those who possessed the knowledge of symbols, levers, and secret sequences. These methods demonstrate the Templars' extraordinary foresight, their awareness that persecution could strike at any moment. Portugal, with its sympathetic rulers and secluded landscapes, became a haven for displaced Templars and their treasures. Many fled there following the French persecution, carrying manuscripts, ritual objects, and possibly sacred relics. The Convent of Christ in Tomar is often cited as a repository of hidden knowledge, with its secret staircases, spiral corridors, and concealed chambers. Researchers have long speculated that objects of immense spiritual significance may have been hidden there, including vessels resembling the descriptions of the Grail. The precision and secrecy of these architectural designs suggest that such treasures were not only stored but carefully protected, with layers of spiritual and practical security. France, too, offers sites steeped in mystery. Ruined Templar castles, especially in regions like Geysers and La Rochelle, are associated with tales of hidden vaults, tunnels, and secret compartments. Some accounts describe crypts containing sacred texts and ritual objects, concealed beneath layers of stone and earth. Whether these sites house the Grail or other relics is unknown, but the sophistication of the hiding methods implies that whatever was stored there was considered supremely valuable, sacred, or dangerous. The combination of architectural ingenuity and ritual significance underscores the Order's unwavering dedication to protection and secrecy. Spain holds its own share of legends. Remote fortresses in Catalonia and Aragon are rumored to have sheltered Templar treasures, concealed in hidden rooms accessible only to those who understood the Order's secret language. In some cases, local folklore suggests that these treasures were moved repeatedly, guided by trusted knights, to avoid detection by inquisitors or rival nobles. The interplay between legend and geography creates a rich tapestry of speculation. Even centuries later, hunters and historians follow clues embedded in symbols, manuscripts, and architectural features, hoping to uncover the hidden wealth of the Order. The treasures were not merely physical objects. They carried spiritual and symbolic weight. Manuscripts encoded with esoteric knowledge, ceremonial artifacts, and vessels like the Grail held meaning far beyond their material form. To the Templars, safeguarding these items was both a spiritual duty and a practical necessity. The meticulous methods of concealment reflect a belief that these objects could not fall into the wrong hands, whether those of kings, inquisitors, or unworthy individuals. Every hidden chamber, every coded symbol, and every carefully documented route represents an intersection of faith, strategy, and devotion. The Holy Grail itself occupies a unique place among these legends. Descriptions vary, from a simple chalice to a vessel infused with divine blood or supernatural power. For centuries, it has been the focal point of quests, romances, and historical speculation. If the Templars ever possessed the Grail, it would have required extraordinary measures for protection. The combination of ritual knowledge, secret networks, and hidden architecture could have allowed them to shield it from the world, passing it between trusted knights or relocating it entirely. Every legend, from forested valleys of France to the sacred corridors of Tomar, hints at the possibility that the Grail was among the treasures they safeguarded. The process of preserving these treasures required unwavering discipline and secrecy. Knights in exile continued the work of safeguarding, often under harsh conditions, isolated from their former comrades and estates. They relied on coded manuscripts, oral instructions, and trusted allies to maintain continuity. Each move, whether across mountains, rivers, or seas, was planned with care, minimizing exposure and maximizing security. This careful preservation ensured that the Order's most sacred relics, manuscripts, and potentially the Grail itself survived the public destruction of the Templars, hidden from both hostile authorities and curious eyes. Legends also suggest that the Templars may have embedded clues to the location of treasures within symbolic architecture, cryptic inscriptions, or coded manuscripts. These markers served as both warnings and guides, ensuring that only the initiated could access the hidden wealth. Even in ruins, archaeologists and treasure hunters note patterns in stone carvings, floor layouts, and secret passages that may point to concealed chambers. Whether these hints lead to treasure or are symbolic messages of faith and devotion, they testify to the ingenuity and foresight of the Order. The persistence of these legends through centuries highlights the enduring fascination with the Templars. The allure is not merely the promise of material wealth, but the mystery of their knowledge, faith, and guardianship. The idea that a sacred relic, perhaps even the Grail, was protected by an order of knights adds layers of intrigue, blending history, legend, and imagination. Modern investigations, treasure hunts, and academic studies continue to follow the faint traces of Templar influence, guided by manuscripts, architecture, and oral tradition, seeking what may remain hidden after centuries of secrecy. Ultimately, the story of Templar treasures, hidden relics, and possibly the Grail underscores the Order's extraordinary combination of devotion, discipline, and foresight. These objects were more than possessions. They were symbols of faith, vessels of sacred knowledge, and markers of spiritual responsibility. The methods of protection, from secret networks to hidden architecture, reflect a sophisticated understanding of both human nature and divine duty. Even today, the surviving traces of these efforts inspire awe, curiosity, and a sense of wonder at a lost world in which faith and secrecy were inseparable. The Templars' hidden treasures remind us that history is not only recorded in texts or monuments, but also concealed in the shadows, protected, encoded, and preserved by those who understood its true value. Whether one seeks gold, manuscripts, or the Grail, the pursuit leads to a deeper appreciation of the Order's discipline, ingenuity, and devotion. In the end, the mystery of these treasures is a testament to the Templars' enduring legacy, a world of faith, secrecy, and guardianship that continues to captivate the imagination, centuries after the Order vanished from public view. Long after the Templars were officially disbanded, whispers persisted of secret missions undertaken to protect the Order's most sacred possessions. These journeys were shrouded in mystery, crossing kingdoms, mountains, and seas, often carried out under the cloak of night, away from prying eyes. Knights who survived the persecution became shadowy figures, moving with purpose, their knowledge of secret routes, hidden chambers, and coded symbols guiding them through dangerous territories. Every step of these clandestine missions required skill, courage, and unwavering loyalty to a cause that no longer had a public face. Some legends recount journeys from France to Portugal, where sympathetic rulers offered refuge to displaced Templars. Along the way, knights were said to have transported sacred relics, manuscripts, and possibly even the Holy Grail, moving them through forests, rivers, and hidden mountain passes. Travelers spoke in whispers of mysterious caravans that appeared and disappeared without trace, guarded by men in white mantles bearing the Red Cross. These missions were not only practical, they were sacred pilgrimages, undertaken with the same devotion, discipline, and secrecy that had defined the order at its height. Other stories suggest missions that reached even further afield. From the Iberian Peninsula to the British Isles, Scotland and Ireland are rumored to have sheltered Templar fugitives carrying treasures and sacred objects. In the rugged highlands, hidden valleys and secluded monasteries became temporary sanctuaries. Knights established secret networks of allies, local nobles, monks, and merchants, who facilitated the safe transport and concealment of valuables. Every journey was a test of faith, courage, and intelligence, with failure carrying the potential not only for personal death, but for the loss of sacred legacies that had been entrusted to them. The logistics of these missions were remarkable. Knights relied on coded manuscripts, secret signs, and oral instructions to navigate unknown or hostile terrain. Maps were often intentionally misleading or concealed within other texts, ensuring that only those initiated into the order could interpret them correctly. Caravans and ships moved under disguise, with treasures hidden beneath ordinary goods or in secret compartments. In some cases, decoy operations were arranged to mislead pursuers, demonstrating the Templars' strategic genius and the extraordinary lengths they were willing to go to protect what was sacred. The Holy Grail, if indeed ever in their custody, was the focus of some of the most perilous and mysterious missions. Legends describe it being moved multiple times to evade detection, its custodians carefully selecting locations that were defensible, secretive, and spiritually significant. In some accounts, the Grail was said to have been temporarily housed in remote castles, subterranean vaults, or secluded chapels, only to be relocated when the threat of capture emerged. Each movement required precision, secrecy, and the cooperation of knights who were bound by vows that went beyond allegiance to kings or popes. They served the divine mission entrusted to them. Some historians suggest that these missions were not solely about the protection of physical objects. The Templars' sacred knowledge, ritual practices, and esoteric manuscripts were equally valuable and required preservation. Knights traveling in exile may have carried encoded texts, oral teachings, or ceremonial instructions, ensuring the continuity of the order's spiritual and mystical traditions. These journeys transformed ordinary landscapes into corridors of secrecy, where rivers, forests, and mountains became part of a living map known only to the Templars. Every mission was simultaneously practical, spiritual, and symbolic, blending devotion with cunning and endurance. Evidence of these missions often exists in fragments. Letters written in code, manuscripts with marginal symbols, or architectural hints that seem to indicate temporary storage or routes. For example, hidden chambers in the Convent of Christ in Portugal or remote Templar castles in Scotland suggest that objects were moved and concealed with extraordinary care. Oral tradition in certain regions still carries tales of mysterious knights, guarded caravans, or miraculous preservation of sacred items. Though details are scarce and sometimes contradictory, the patterns point to coordinated, deliberate efforts to safeguard treasures and knowledge against overwhelming threats. The dangers faced by knights undertaking these missions were immense. They traversed hostile lands, navigated treacherous terrain, and avoided agents of kings, popes, or inquisitors. Encounters with bandits, enemy soldiers, and harsh natural conditions were frequent. Yet the knights' training, discipline, and commitment to secrecy allowed them to complete these tasks with remarkable success. Each mission became a test of both faith and ingenuity, a demonstration of the Templars' ability to operate beyond the constraints of ordinary medieval society. Their survival and the continued concealment of sacred objects testify to their extraordinary skill and dedication. In some legends, the missions extended beyond Europe. Rumors suggest that Templar fugitives traveled to remote regions of the Middle East or even across the Mediterranean, establishing temporary safe havens or hidden caches. These journeys, though difficult to verify, highlight the global reach of the Templars' secret networks. Even as their public order fell, the spirit of the knights persisted in exile, ensuring that treasures, sacred relics, and esoteric knowledge continued to be protected, even in distant lands. Every mission reinforced the Templars' reputation not only as warriors, but as guardians of the sacred, able to move with purpose and discretion across vast distances. The psychological toll of these missions cannot be underestimated. Knights were often isolated from their families, comrades, and former communities, carrying immense responsibility for treasures and knowledge that could change the course of history or faith if lost. They navigated a world where trust was scarce and betrayal could be fatal. Yet their faith, training, and adherence to the Order's principles provided the resilience needed to endure. Every hidden chamber, secret path, and concealed artifact was a testament to their discipline, courage, and unwavering devotion to a sacred mission. Ultimately, the secret missions of the Templars underscore the Order's extraordinary combination of faith, intelligence, and foresight. These journeys preserved knowledge, treasures, and possibly the Holy Grail itself, ensuring continuity even after the fall of the public order. They reveal a dimension of the Templars that is rarely captured in chronicles. Men acting in shadow, driven by loyalty to the sacred, willing to risk life and freedom to safeguard what was entrusted to them. In this light, every story of hidden treasure, secret chamber, or mysterious caravan becomes more than legend. It is a glimpse into a hidden world of devotion, ingenuity, and enduring mystery. The enduring fascination with these secret missions reflects the Templars' legacy, a combination of discipline, secrecy, and sacred responsibility that continues to captivate the imagination. Each journey, each hidden route, and each protected treasure is a reminder that history is often written not in public events alone, but in the quiet, determined efforts of those who operate in the shadows. The Templars' missions remind us that what is hidden can be as powerful, mysterious, and enduring as what is seen. Even centuries after the Templars vanished from public view, their presence persisted in stories, legends, and literature. Medieval chronicles occasionally hinted at hidden treasures, secret rituals, and mysterious journeys, but it was in the myths and romances that the Order's legacy took on a life of its own. Poets and chroniclers wove tales of knights guarding sacred relics, traveling in secrecy, and embarking on quests that blended history with spiritual symbolism. These narratives transformed the Templars from historical actors into almost mythical figures, guardians of divine secrets and enigmatic treasures that had captured the imagination of generations. The Holy Grail, central to many of these tales, became an enduring symbol of the Templars' secret knowledge. In Arthurian legends, the Grail was depicted as a vessel of immense power and sanctity, a cup capable of providing healing, wisdom, or even immortality. Some stories suggested that only the pure of heart, or those chosen by divine providence, could approach it, linking the artifact to the Templars' rigorous spiritual discipline. The association between the Order and the Grail gave rise to countless theories, imagining knights safeguarding it across Europe and beyond, moving it through secret networks established during the Order's heyday. The blending of history and legend created a tapestry in which the Templars were both protectors and seekers. Chronicles described them as men of exceptional skill, navigating political intrigue and hostile landscapes, while preserving relics that could change the course of faith. Meanwhile, literature expanded these stories into elaborate quests, portraying knights overcoming spiritual and physical trials to safeguard the Grail or other sacred artifacts. These narratives captured not only the imagination of their contemporaries, but also the enduring fascination of modern audiences, who continue to explore the mysteries of the Templars through both historical research and storytelling. Throughout Europe, certain locations became focal points for these legends. France, particularly the Loire Valley and regions surrounding Geysers, is rich in tales of hidden Templar treasures and secret chambers. Portugal's Convent of Christ in Tomar inspired stories of secret staircases, spiral corridors, and concealed alcoves, suggesting the preservation of sacred knowledge and relics. Scotland and Ireland, with their rugged landscapes and remote monasteries, were also imagined as havens where fleeing knights hid treasures and manuscripts. Each location, whether real or imagined, contributed to the narrative of the Templars as both historical and mythical guardians of the sacred. The fascination with the Templars in literature also intersects with the mysteries of architecture and symbolism. Writers and chroniclers often referenced hidden chambers, coded inscriptions, and symbolic designs, blending factual observations with imaginative interpretation. The Red Cross, the spiral staircases, and geometric carvings became symbols of secret knowledge, inspiring countless stories in which deciphering these signs could lead to hidden treasures or spiritual enlightenment. In this way, the Templars' physical legacy, fortresses, chapels, and vaults, was transformed into narrative devices, encoding both mystery and adventure for generations to come. The enduring mythos of the Templars is further complicated by the fusion of fact, speculation, and imaginative embellishment. While some accounts are grounded in historical evidence, letters, court records, and architectural studies, others rely heavily on conjecture and oral tradition. Over centuries, the line between history and legend has blurred, creating a fertile ground for speculation about hidden grails, lost treasures, and secret knowledge. This interplay between historical record and myth is part of what makes the Templars so compelling. They are at once real and almost fantastical, their legacy inhabiting both the tangible and imagined realms. Literary works, particularly during the Renaissance and later periods, reinforced the Templar mythos. Writers depicted knights as both pious and formidable, guardians of knowledge that could challenge earthly and spiritual authority alike. Novels, poems, and treatises explored the tension between faith, secrecy, and power, often highlighting the order's destruction as a tragic betrayal. These works preserved and amplified the aura of mystery surrounding the Templars, connecting their historical struggles with broader themes of devotion, courage, and the search for hidden truth. Legends surrounding the Grail specifically imbue the Templars with a sense of divine purpose. Tales describe the Grail as capable of miraculous feats, healing the sick, granting insight, or preserving life, and its custody as a sacred duty entrusted to a select few. The idea that the Templars were charged with guarding such a vessel positions them not merely as warriors but as spiritual stewards, responsible for bridging the earthly and the divine. Every legend, whether of secret missions, hidden vaults, or perilous journeys, reinforces the Order's image as guardians of a sacred mission beyond worldly comprehension. In some literary traditions, the Templars are depicted as keepers of hidden wisdom, combining martial skill with esoteric knowledge. They are portrayed deciphering ancient symbols, safeguarding manuscripts, and performing rituals designed to preserve the spiritual power of the relics under their care. These portrayals, though often romanticized, echo historical evidence of their secret networks, coded manuscripts, and hidden chambers. Literature thus amplifies and perpetuates the sense that the Templars' legacy cannot be fully understood through conventional history alone. It is encoded in symbols, architecture, and stories, accessible only to those who seek with patience, insight, and imagination. The persistence of Templar myths in literature has fueled modern quests for truth and discovery. Treasure hunters, historians, and enthusiasts have been inspired by these stories to search for hidden grails, secret manuscripts, and forgotten relics. Manuscripts, floor plans, and historical records are often re-examined in light of literary references, while sites across Europe are explored for evidence of concealed chambers or hidden routes. Even in the 21st century, the Templars' narrative continues to bridge history and myth, inviting both rigorous investigation and imaginative speculation. Ultimately, literature and legend transform the Templars from historical actors into symbols of mystery, devotion, and guardianship. They are figures who embody the intersection of secrecy, faith, and knowledge, a living bridge between past and present, history and myth. The stories of hidden treasures, secret missions, and the Grail illustrate a worldview in which devotion, courage, and intellect converge to protect what is sacred. Through these narratives, the Templars endure not only in historical memory but in the imagination, captivating minds and hearts across generations. In tracing the Templars' presence in literature, one realizes that their legacy extends beyond manuscripts or architecture. It resides in the enduring power of storytelling, where historical fact meets myth, and where the search for hidden truths mirrors the quests of the knights themselves. Whether through tales of secret missions, sacred relics, or the elusive Grail, the Templars continue to inspire awe, curiosity, and a sense of wonder, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to endure, inviting us to explore the hidden corridors of history, faith, and imagination. Even in modern times, the Templars' mysteries continue to captivate scholars, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts alike. Across Europe and beyond, investigations seek to uncover the Order's hidden treasures, secret manuscripts, and, most tantalizingly, the Holy Grail itself. These quests are driven not only by the hope of material discovery, but also by a desire to uncover the truths that the Templars safeguarded in secrecy. Archaeologists, historians, and even amateur explorers pore over architectural layouts, ancient documents, and coded symbols, attempting to trace the footsteps of knights who vanished centuries ago, yet left enduring clues behind. One focus of modern investigation is the Convent of Christ in Tomar, Portugal, a site long associated with displaced Templars. Scholars have meticulously examined its secret staircases, hidden corridors, and obscure alcoves, searching for evidence of concealed treasures or sacred relics. Spiral staircases that twist in impossible geometries, hidden rooms obscured by walls or false floors, and cryptic symbols etched into stone all suggest a level of deliberate concealment. Some researchers speculate that these architectural designs were intended to protect not only material wealth but also esoteric knowledge, a spiritual legacy that the Templars deemed more valuable than gold. France, too, continues to reveal tantalizing clues. Ruined castles in the Loire Valley, geysers, and other Templar strongholds have been studied for hidden vaults and chambers. Archaeologists and treasure hunters look for subtle irregularities in stonework, secret tunnels beneath chapels, and coded inscriptions that may point to concealed objects. Some reports describe buried caches of gold or sacred artifacts discovered during restoration or excavation, though few have been fully verified. The allure lies as much in the possibility of what remains hidden as in what has been found. A puzzle where each new discovery raises further questions about the Templars' ingenuity and devotion. Modern researchers also examine manuscripts and archival documents for clues to Templar secrets. Letters, financial records, and court proceedings sometimes contain coded messages or references to hidden locations. Marginalia, symbols, and obscure phrases in these texts may have guided knights in exile, directing them to safe locations or revealing the presence of sacred relics. Decoding these texts requires a combination of linguistic skill, historical knowledge, and intuition, reflecting the very expertise that Templars themselves would have employed to safeguard their secrets. Each discovery, no matter how small, contributes to the larger picture of an order that operated on multiple levels: spiritual, strategic, and highly secretive. The Holy Grail remains the focal point of fascination. Numerous theories exist about its possible locations, ranging from the Loire Valley and Portugal to Scotland and even distant regions of the Middle East. Some researchers posit that the Grail may have been moved repeatedly to evade detection, hidden within secret networks that connected dispersed Templar cells. Others suggest that the Grail, if it exists, was never a single object but rather a symbol of divine knowledge, safeguarded through manuscripts, rituals, and spiritual practice. The ambiguity surrounding its existence fuels speculation, ensuring that the search continues in both historical research and popular imagination. In addition to physical relics, some modern investigations focus on Templar practices and knowledge. Ritual texts, coded manuscripts, and esoteric symbols are analyzed for patterns that may reveal lost wisdom. Some scholars argue that the Templars' spiritual and strategic methods were as valuable as the treasures themselves, representing a legacy of discipline, devotion, and ingenuity. By studying the interplay between historical events, architecture, and ritual practice, researchers attempt to reconstruct the mindset of knights who operated in secrecy, protecting objects and knowledge that could influence both faith and power. The role of geography in modern investigation is critical. Remote valleys, hidden river crossings, and mountainous terrain continue to inspire searches for concealed treasures. Explorers often combine historical records with modern technology, ground-penetrating radar, drone mapping, and geospatial analysis to identify potential sites of interest. While many searches yield no physical discoveries, the process itself illuminates the extraordinary care with which the Templars moved, stored, and protected their treasures. Every landscape, from forested hills to secluded chapels, becomes a testament to the Order's ingenuity and the enduring mystery surrounding their lost relics. Some investigations also focus on the movement of Templar fugitives and their networks after the Order's suppression. Knights who fled persecution in France or England may have carried knowledge, manuscripts, or sacred objects to Portugal, Scotland, or beyond. Tracing these movements can reveal patterns of concealment, highlighting how the Templars adapted to new environments while maintaining their sacred mission. Oral traditions, local folklore, and scattered manuscripts provide fragments of evidence, suggesting that the network of protection and secrecy persisted long after the Order's dissolution. The interplay between legend and investigation creates a sense of cinematic drama. Sites of possible Templar activity are imbued with a feeling of hidden danger and sacred purpose. Explorers must navigate both the physical terrain and layers of historical ambiguity, deciphering clues left centuries ago. Each potential discovery, whether a secret chamber, manuscript, or artifact, carries the weight of history and the allure of a hidden narrative. The combination of fact, conjecture, and imagination ensures that modern investigations capture the same sense of suspense, devotion, and mystery that characterized the Templars themselves. Ultimately, these modern quests are as much about discovery as they are about reflection. They raise questions about faith, devotion, and the ways in which knowledge and power are preserved or lost. The Templars' lost treasures and possible Grail custodianship remind us that history is not only about what is recorded but also about what is concealed, protected, and passed down in secrecy. Each investigation, whether successful or not, adds another layer to the enduring story of an order whose legacy bridges the sacred, the strategic, and the mysterious. In this way, the modern search for Templar treasures is not merely a hunt for gold or relics. It is an exploration of history, human ingenuity, and the enduring power of belief. Each site visited, manuscript studied, and rumor investigated contributes to a living narrative, one in which the Templars' secrets continue to resonate, inviting us to question what has been lost and what might still be hidden. The pursuit of these mysteries carries the same essence of suspense, devotion, and secrecy that define the Order itself, reminding us that the Templars' story is far from finished. The fascination with the Templars endures because it transcends time. Their combination of faith, strategy, and secrecy resonates with the human desire to protect what is sacred, to uncover what is hidden, and to understand a world beyond ordinary perception. Modern investigations, while grounded in research and technology, echo the timeless tension of the Templars' own journeys, the interplay of risk, knowledge, and devotion. Each new discovery, each whispered legend, keeps the memory of the Order alive, reminding us that some mysteries, carefully concealed, have the power to endure across centuries. The Templars were more than warriors. They were strategists, organizers, and guardians of sacred knowledge. Beyond their castles and fortresses lay an intricate web of secret routes, hidden passages, and safe havens carefully designed to protect both their members and their treasures. From the winding valleys of France to the remote highlands of Scotland, knights established networks that allowed for rapid communication, clandestine travel, and the secure concealment of holy relics. These routes were not marked on maps for ordinary eyes, often hidden under the guise of farms, forests, or abandoned monasteries. Every path, every hidden vault was carefully planned with security and secrecy in mind. Knights fleeing persecution carried manuscripts, sacred chalices, and coded instructions through forests and rivers, relying on their knowledge of these secret networks to evade capture. It was not only a physical challenge but also a psychological one, maintaining composure, vigilance, and discipline under constant threat. The success of these journeys depended on both trust and ingenuity. The Templars' ability to navigate dangerous landscapes while protecting their mission became legendary. This hidden network also extended into communication. Knights used codes, symbols, and cryptic messages to relay information, often concealing instructions in seemingly ordinary documents. Even today, historians uncover traces of these systems in Templar architecture, carvings, and medieval manuscripts. Coded crosses, mysterious inscriptions, and hidden compartments indicate a level of planning and foresight that continues to fascinate researchers. Every symbol and pathway was a layer of protection, a deliberate attempt to ensure that sacred knowledge and relics remained safe from prying eyes. These secret routes and networks reveal the Templars' intelligence and foresight. They were not merely preserving relics. They were safeguarding the spiritual and intellectual heritage of their order. Each hidden path, whether in dense forests or beneath city streets, exemplifies the extraordinary combination of courage, loyalty, and meticulous planning that defined the order. The Templars' hidden networks were the veins through which their mission flowed, invisible to outsiders but vital to the survival of their treasures and teachings. Ultimately, the story of these hidden paths is a story of human ingenuity and devotion. It reminds us that some legacies are preserved not in public displays of power, but in the careful, quiet acts of protection and strategy. These networks continue to inspire awe, inviting us to imagine knights moving unseen through forests, mountains, and villages, carrying with them the weight of sacred responsibility and the knowledge that discovery could mean disaster or salvation. The Templars' influence extends beyond material relics. It reaches into the psychological and spiritual realms, shaping how we understand secrecy, devotion, and faith. Their mission required unwavering discipline and extraordinary moral courage. Knights were entrusted with sacred objects and knowledge that, if revealed, could disrupt political or spiritual order. This responsibility imposed immense psychological pressure, demanding not only physical endurance but emotional resilience. The secrecy they maintained was as much an act of spiritual devotion as it was a tactical necessity. Guarding sacred relics required continuous vigilance. Knights navigated perilous terrain, evaded hostile forces, and safeguarded treasures from both greedy monarchs and inquisitors. Each journey was a test of character, demanding trust, courage, and focus. The act of concealment itself became a spiritual exercise, reflecting the Templars' understanding that some knowledge and sacred objects were too powerful to expose. Their psychological fortitude allowed them to maintain secrecy under extreme duress, and it is this human aspect that continues to fascinate modern audiences. The Templars' legacy also includes the emotional impact on the wider world. Tales of hidden chambers, lost manuscripts, and sacred treasures captured imaginations and inspired fear, admiration, and reverence. Legends spread among common folk and nobility alike, creating an aura of mystery and power that elevated the Templars beyond ordinary history. These stories reveal not only the Order's achievements but the human need to believe in the unseen, the sacred, and the extraordinary. The psychological resonance of secrecy and devotion remains compelling even today. Modern fascination with the Templars' spiritual and psychological legacy reflects our own desire to understand courage, loyalty, and moral integrity. The Knights' ability to protect knowledge, perform sacred duties, and maintain discipline under persecution offers enduring lessons. Their story reminds us that true devotion often requires sacrifice, secrecy, and a steadfast commitment to principles that transcend personal gain. It is not merely the relics themselves but the human qualities exemplified in their preservation that continue to inspire awe. In essence, the Templars' psychological and spiritual legacy teaches us that secrecy, courage, and moral conviction are powerful forces. By safeguarding sacred knowledge and relics, they created a moral and intellectual heritage that persists across centuries. Their story challenges us to consider the human capacity for devotion, resilience, and the preservation of what is sacred. The echoes of their secret networks, disciplined minds, and unwavering faith continue to resonate, leaving us both inspired and humbled by the extraordinary lengths humans will go to honor and protect what they hold most dear. Even centuries after their fall, the Templars' hidden relics remain a tantalizing mystery. Legends speak of sacred objects, the Grail, manuscripts, and ceremonial treasures, carefully concealed to protect their power and sanctity. Castles, monasteries, and remote valleys across Europe hint at secret chambers and hidden passages, designed to withstand the passage of time and human curiosity. The surviving knights, fleeing persecution, carried these treasures through forests, mountains, and rivers, guided by loyalty and unwavering devotion. These relics were not merely material wealth. Manuscripts with coded rituals and sacred knowledge, chalices, crosses, and other ceremonial objects symbolize divine connection and spiritual authority. Protecting them required discipline, courage, and moral insight, reflecting the Templars' dual role as warriors and custodians of the sacred. Some scholars even suggest the Grail may have been a symbol of knowledge rather than a physical object, a representation of wisdom, faith, and divine mystery. Modern explorers and historians continue to follow the Templars' trail, examining architecture, folklore, and historical records for clues. Hidden chambers, false walls, and cryptic inscriptions hint at treasures yet to be discovered. But beyond the thrill of discovery lies the enduring legacy of the Templars themselves, a testament to human courage, secrecy, and devotion. The mystery of their lost relics endures because it transcends history. It challenges us to wonder, imagine, and reflect on what might still remain hidden, preserved by those who understood its true value. The Templar story is as much about human devotion as it is about history. Their mission to protect sacred relics, manuscripts, and possibly the Grail demanded extraordinary courage, discipline, and secrecy. Knights operated in shadows, often risking life and freedom to safeguard knowledge and faith. Their exile and persecution only deepened the mystery of their treasures, reinforcing the perception of the Templars as both heroic and enigmatic. Every hidden chamber, coded manuscript, and secret journey reflects the Order's devotion to a higher calling. The Grail, whether literal or symbolic, represents spiritual connection, wisdom, and moral responsibility. Protecting it required foresight and courage beyond the ordinary, a commitment that resonates centuries later. The Templars' secrecy was not only practical but deeply symbolic, reflecting a moral duty to preserve what was sacred against the forces of greed, fear, or ignorance. Even today, their legacy inspires wonder and reflection. Historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts trace their steps, exploring castles, ruins, and folklore, drawn by the allure of hidden truths. Their story reminds us that devotion, moral courage, and discipline can create legacies that endure far longer than titles, lands, or material power. The Templars' hidden treasures and sacred knowledge stand as symbols of faith, human ingenuity, and the extraordinary lengths people will go to protect what they hold most dear. The story of the Templars leaves us with more questions than answers, and that is precisely its enduring power. The Grail, sacred relics, and hidden manuscripts may or may not be waiting in secret chambers, but their true legacy is moral, spiritual, and emotional. The Order exemplified devotion, courage, and secrecy, showing how human commitment can transcend time. What makes the Templars timeless is not just their artifacts but their dedication to a mission larger than themselves. Knights risked lives to protect sacred knowledge, moving in shadows and preserving secrets that might have otherwise been lost to history. Their hidden treasures are symbols of this devotion, reminders that what is most valuable is often invisible, preserved through discipline, courage, and faith. Even now, the mystery continues to inspire. The Templars challenge us to reflect on devotion, secrecy, and the preservation of what we hold sacred. Their story reminds us that some truths endure, hidden yet alive in the imagination, history, and the moral courage of those who protect them. Perhaps some relics still remain concealed, waiting for the patient and devoted to uncover them. And perhaps, the greatest treasure of all is the enduring lesson of the Templars, that faith, courage, and integrity can create a legacy that defies the passage of centuries, leaving us with awe, reflection, and the eternal allure of the unknown.